Township Committee, February 6, 2012. The notice of this meeting was properly given by transmission to the Isaiah Park Press. Independent and posting at the Township Municipal Building and filing with the Township Clerk on January 7, 2012.
I think that was repeated.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Time out for roll call. Deputy Mayor Mistell.
Here.
Committeewoman Murray.
Here.
Scharpenberger.
Here.
Committeeman Stambrino.
Here.
Mayor Fiore.
Here.
May we have a moment of silence to honor the troops serving worldwide, defending our freedoms and way of life. Thank you. At this time, we have known action items. Our first action item on tonight's agenda, we have a resolution 12-075, resolution authorizing payment of bills for January 17th and February 6, 2012.
So moved. Second.
Deputy Mayor Mistell.
Yes.
Committeewoman Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Scharpenberg.
Yes.
Committeeman Stambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Fiore.
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt resolution 12-075. At this time, we have resolution 12-076, a resolution authorizing and directing the annual school board elections be moved from April to November.
So moved. Second.
Deputy Mayor Mistell.
Yes.
Committeewoman Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Scharpenberger.
Yes.
Committeeman Stambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Fiore.
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt resolution 12-076. Our next item, we have resolution 12-077, a resolution authorizing a temporary budget appropriation for 2012.
So moved. Second.
Deputy Mayor Mistell.
Yes.
Committeewoman Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Scharpenberger.
Yes.
Committeeman Stambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Fiore.
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt resolution 12-077. Our next item, we have resolution 12-078, resolution authorizing sale of township property at auction.
So moved.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Mistell.
Yes.
Committeewoman Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Scharpenberger.
Yes.
Committeeman Stambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Fiore.
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt resolution 12-078. Our next item, we have 12-079, resolution authorizing accreditation consulting services.
So moved. Second.
Deputy Mayor Mistell.
Yes.
Committeewoman Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Scharpenberger.
Yes.
Committeeman Stambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Fiore.
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt resolution 12-079. At this time, we have resolution 12-080, resolution authorizing the deputy mayor to solemnize marriages and civil unions in the absence of the mayor.
So moved. Second.
Deputy Mayor Mistell.
Yes.
Committeewoman Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Scharpenberger.
Yes.
Committeeman Stambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Fiore.
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt resolution 12-080. Our next resolution, 12-081, resolution authorizing issuance of bid specifications for solid waste, bulk refuse, and recycling collection.
So moved.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Mistell.
Yes.
Committeewoman Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Scharpenberger.
Yes.
Committeeman Stambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Fiore.
Yes.
Our last item for action tonight, our raffle license number 12-07, Middletown North Booster Club, raffle application approval.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Mistell.
Yes.
Committeewoman Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Scharpenberger.
Yes.
Committeeman Stambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Fiore.
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt raffle license 12-07. For our agenda items for February 21st, we're going to have certificates honoring Employee of the Month for January and proclaiming March 2nd, 2012 as Read Across America Day. For minutes, we'll have January 1st, 2012 reorganization meeting, the January 17th, 2012 regular meeting, and the January 17th, 2012 executive session. For public hearing of proposed ordinances, we'll have public hearing on 2012-3052, an ordinance reorganizing the structure of departments of public works and recreation. We'll have a consent agenda which will include resolutions, bingo and raffle applications, and volunteer firefighter applications. For tonight's discussion, we begin with community development mortgage release, the LAD property performance guarantee release, the Michael and Catherine Roberts subdivision performance guarantee release, Affordable Housing Alliance for the Wallace Tract, Impact Oasis supportive housing.
I don't know if you'd like to comment to the last two items. One, Jason to explain the proposed projects that we're using for housing trust for.
Good evening. The Executive Director of the Affordable Housing Alliance in Monmouth County has submitted a request for funds from the Township's Affordable Housing Trust account to help defray costs for construction expenses at the Wallace Point development. The Wallace Point development was approved by the Planning Board about 5 years ago and will include 100% affordable development on Highway 36 in Port Monmouth, and it will include 12 rental units, 4 of which will be supportive housing for disabled adults. The Affordable Housing Alliance has had difficulty of raising sufficient funds through federal and state resources to implement the project, and has asked the township for a subsidy of $20,000 per unit from the Affordable Housing Trust for a total subsidy of $240,000. That would be entirely consistent with our spending plan as approved by the state. And if the committee looks favorably on their request, we would be able to have a resolution ready by the second meeting of the month. The second issue relates similarly to the Affordable Housing Impact Oasis is a partner of the townships at the Cole property. If you recall, last year the township purchased 17 acres of open space in conjunction with Impact Oasis, the New York, New Jersey Beekeeper, and the Monmouth Conservation Foundation. The Impact Oasis group has submitted a request for funds at the property that they purchased for exorbitant and extraordinary costs associated with installing a dedicated water line to an existing home. Impact Oasis is going to be providing supportive housing for autistic kids at the site, and they put in a request to the township for a total of $40,000 to help defray construction expenses for this unforeseen water line extension. And primarily that was needed due to code issues where the entire building, which is a historic structure, needed to have a central sprinkler system. And that wasn't something that they were aware of going into the project. And they certainly weren't aware that a dedicated water line was going to be necessary for that sprinkler system. So again, that expenditure would be consistent with the township state spending.
Yeah, just to clarify, all of those items are utilizing the fund from the Township Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is a dedicated fund, comes from developer fees, been collected over the years. It's not permitted to use for any other purpose, but supporting affordable housing projects.
Our next item, we have Kings Landing condo agreement. The Villages at Chapel Hill MSA.
I'll just very briefly, we have 2 municipal service agreements that are pretty standard for the course. Kings Landing had a pre-existing agreement that we've been renegotiating over the course of the last year, and Villages at Chapel Hill is a new subdivision, new condominium, so they require a new agreement from scratch. So both of the draft agreements are still subject to some changes. I just got some feedback from the council for Villages at Chapel Hill today. Haven't gotten through that yet, so there may be a couple tweaks in the drafts that you have, but they should be substantially complete and ready for action hopefully at the next meeting.
Our next item, we have the safety manual. The supporting assembly bill number 132, curbing abuse of unemployment benefits by seasonal employees. The stop sign at 7th Avenue and Navasink Avenue. Under purchasing items, we have the grind and mulch operation, the farmland lease, tree trimming services, electrical repair and maintenance, and plumbing repair and maintenance. And then we have the swim club utility, the solution property sale.
Since the last meeting with regard to the swim club, know, we had a lengthy discussion about how we were going to proceed to deal with the issue of opening and not opening the swim club or disposing of the swim club in some way. Since that time, we've had a number of parties contact us about expressing interest in the property for various uses, I should say, various recreational uses. No, we've had no contact at this point with anyone wanting to utilize the property in any way other than some kind of recreational activity. We had about 6 or 7 serious inquiries. So in polls, we're asking questions about the conditions of the property. So we scheduled last week on Friday a walkthrough for all of the interested parties, and spent a good hour to 2 hours there on Friday, showing people the ins and outs of the facility, in the buildings, bathhouses, cabanas, pools, and giving them full access, so that they, all of the parties certainly expressed an interest in the property. At this point, we have not received a proposal from anyone to operate the facility. In other words, to simply just step into our shoes and operate the facility for either next year or any length of time in the future. But there is certainly interest in people on the part of individuals looking to utilize the facility, take over the facility, and operate it in some recreational fashion. So, given that, I think, and given the short time that we have to address this, we are going to need to move to auction the property with a recreational limitation. At least that's my suggestion. That as you know, the property is zoned commercial, zoned exactly the same zoning as the shopping center next door. I don't think there's any desire on anyone's part to see it developed commercially or residentially. It's not zoned for residential, but there's certainly no desire to see it developed that way either. I think the primary interest is to try to have the property utilized in a fashion which at least provides a recreational opportunity for the public. And so it seems to me that at this point the most prudent thing is to start to move in that direction into developing the language that we would need to restrict the utilization of the property to recreational activities, and consider putting it out for auction and see what the interest is in the development community out there to operate a recreational facility instead of us operating it and requiring the property to do so.
Would that guarantee putting that restricted deed in that it could not become Home Depot, condos?
Pretty much guarantee it. The deed restrictions are extremely hard, if not impossible, to undo once they're put into place. And the reason for that is because if you purchase the property with a deed restriction on it, that will clearly affect the value of the property. So it would be completely unfair to have someone purchase the property with a deed restriction and then have to be able to extinguish that restriction and be able to use the property for anything, because then they've got a windfall. So it's very hard to undo a deed restriction once it's put into place. So yeah, I'd say we do, about as tight as you can get of a restriction to limit it to recreational uses for the future.
I think it's important to note that the local lands and buildings law would require it to go through an auction process, whether it's through an auctioneer or through just the township doing itself. Our past practice with properties is that the utilization of the auctioneer typically, secured a lot more interest in the property. And on the deed restriction issue, it would be deed restricted, and we would also look to zone the property appropriately. We have actually a recreational use schedule under section 16-902C of the township's land use code right now that sets forth the permitted recreational uses. My office, along with Jason, we're looking at those to see whether it would need any tweaks, so it would be a double layer, so that if the property were just zoned for recreational use, somebody could come in for a variance, but if it's also deed restricted on top of that, they couldn't come in for a variance that would violate the deed restriction as well. The local lands and buildings law greatly, and as we discussed somewhat given in executive and in other negotiations with other parties looking at the property and the potential options, the the local lands and buildings, land use law greatly limits the municipality's ability. We can't, we either have to sell the property at auction. We're very limited in what we can do with respect to structuring other arrangements at arm's length. We have a little more flexibility with nonprofits, but the problem time and time again was that nobody is willing to make capital improvements necessary without actually retaining ownership of the property. Any other arrangement would require what's known as a reverter clause, whereby the township, the property would revert to the township at any which point it wasn't used for that public recreational use. But nobody's willing to express any willingness to do that absent having ownership of the property, so that they could retain some value. And quite frankly, they wouldn't be able to secure financing to make any capital improvements with that, under that sort of an arrangement. So the auction is really the only route you could go with finding a viable, interested private party to operate it as a recreational facility.
Tony, just as a question, obviously from the last meeting and the immediate attention that the last meeting received, which I would anticipate drew the attention of some of these entities to reach out to the township. I know they some reached out to me, and I forwarded on to you. Do any of these entities at this point, it's a two-part question, do they run swim facilities, and if they run swim facilities, did they have any interest in running the swim facility for us, or was their interest strictly to purchase and then let them run their business from there?
The primary interest seems to be and yes, there are interested parties who have experience in swim type facilities, similar type of facilities as our club. So yes, there are groups that have experience at it. None have expressed their interest in simply operating it for us.
Any other questions?
Just one other issue that and the CFO probably chime in is one of the raised issue, because we have to do our budgeting for, was it March 9th or something? So we would also have to take, if the committee moves forward in this route, introduces the ordinance to sell it at an open public auction, the dissolution of the utility would also have to take place, because we would have to assume the capital debt on the facility in order to accomplish that. We couldn't do the budget without that.
That capital debt is recoverable upon sale, correct, Mr. Sante? Any other questions? Dr. Sharpler,
One quick discussion item. I was invited to the Community Affairs Council meeting for a presentation on a History Day, which would be a volunteer effort. And they asked for our support on it, and I said I thought it was a good idea. It was something I'd like to put maybe a resolution at the next meetings in support of. They're going to try and line it up in conjunction with the schools, so it sounded like a very good idea, no cost to the town, so I think it's something we should support. And I'm going to have some more information I'm going to give to Mrs. Brunt, and give you a little bit more background on what they're asking to do. But probably May or June, certainly before the end of school, but that's what they're looking at. That's it.
Now we have Township Committee comments.
Mrs. Murray.
First?
First.
Actually, I have two things I'd like to touch on. The first is regarding the library board, which has been in flux, and you may have read about it in the news the last 2 weeks. Concerning the resignation of two of our library board trustees, I'd like to say it's unfortunate that there's such divisive rhetoric circulating in the community regarding the Township Committee's relationship with the members of the library and the library board. As the mayor's designee on the board, I've witnessed this firsthand, and this talk is not only counterproductive but baseless. The Township Committee and the library are part of the same entity, and to suggest we try to harm ourselves it's just ridiculous, and usually the remarks of people who are politically motivated. I'd just like to assure the community that the Township Committee has been and will continue to protect the best interests of the community, and that obviously and certainly includes the library. Secondly, regarding the pool club, and I'm sorry that I can't tell, especially the kids, what you want to hear. the pool club, as we've discussed, cannot be operated on the backs of the taxpayers, and this has already been something that we brought up. And I also apologize because it seems to be that the wire for all this noise is coming from me. But I am confident that there will be an expedient resolution to this, and that a private entity will be able to come in and facilitate the maximum benefit to the community by selling it as a deed-restricted property. That's it. Thank you.
Senator Brito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make some comments on the swim club this evening, as I know that most of you are here to speak to us about it, as you were last month. When we looked at this, and when I looked at this as a member of the committee, everything that we look at has to be a balance between the users of the facility and the taxpayers of the Township of Middletown. So what's very important is that, number one, we as the township maintain what we have. And what is that? That is a recreational facility on that site. And that is not looking to sell the property for any other use, meaning whether it's a big box or whether it's retail, whether it's housing. So one thing that you've heard this evening is that the Township Committee has every desire to maintain that property as a recreational use for the benefit of the Township of Middletown. However, here is the balance side of this. The balance side of this is in the ordinance that was written by the Township Committee at the time of purchase. The balance side of this is that this facility cannot be run in a deficit scenario. It has to be self-sustaining. And to that end, when the committee has looked at the performance numbers over the past few years, from 2008 to 2011, we've had to use the utility. The Township Committee, as the swim club utility, has had to use surplus funds to operate the facility, meaning that the fees generated did not cover all the expenses, which was not in keeping with the ordinance. So, at this point, our options in order to maintain the recreational use are exactly what we're recommending, and what I'm certainly supporting as a member of the committee, is that we put the property to auction, we maintain and insist on a recreational facility use as a deed restriction. Now keep in mind, the Township Committee does not have the ability to fund capital improvements to this site. It does not have the ability to return that site to what it needs to be or expand its recreational use. So we want to give a private owner the ability to make it a better facility for you, for the users of the Township of Middletown, but not at the expense of the remainder of the taxpayers of the Township of Middletown. So it's important to understand that. We want to maintain the core recreational use there. We don't want to do it at additional expense to the township, the taxpayers of the Township of Middletown. And at this point in time, the Township Committee does not have the ability, either by bonding or by ordinance, to provide that expansion, that better use. So it's going to be my recommendation, and obviously we've supported the fact that we're moving ahead with the sale of the property with the recreation deed restriction, so we can continue to provide you with recreational use, but not at the expense of the taxpayers of Middletown. That's all I have for this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Dr. Scharfenberger.
I think I'll forego comments for tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor.
Just to continue with the swim club, it's as a member of the swim club, it's very hard for me personally, but very candidly, I have to agree with my other committee members here that with the way the swim club has been hemorrhaging monies and the facility deteriorating, we are stuck between a rock and a hard place as a commission. We can't burden the whole town, all the taxpayers with a one swim club. So I'm have to be in support of using it as, or putting it up for auction, but with the deed restriction use for during the sale.
I have a few comments before I'll speak about the swim club, but a few things on the agenda tonight that are important. I see a lot of young parents here and a lot of kids here, and one of the things that you may have noticed that were discussed, actually a resolution that we had passed this evening, was a resolution supporting the changing of school board elections from April to November. And that was passed by the school board also recently at their most recent meeting. It is a new tool that the townships and school boards are able to utilize to move the elections, to save taxpayer dollars from having additional elections. I believe the clerk has told me it's in excess of anywhere from $25,000 to $40,000 an election. So this is something that's very important. I know the Middletown Board of Education has also approved it. We took that same action tonight. This is made possible thanks to the legislation that was passed very recently and signed into law by the governor. And I think it's the right thing for the taxpayers and the voters of Middletown. It will certainly increase participation being in November, and it'll save costs for both the Board of Education and the township with that. And it will take effect this year, so there won't be a Board of Education election in April. That will now be moved to November, so I suppose that they just extend their terms, but that's something that Mr. Nelson is approved, so until November. A few other comments this evening. Committeewoman Murray is my mayor's designee, as she mentioned, to the library board, and unfortunately there has been a lot that has been written, a lot that has gone on between the library board, some trustees, and the Township Committee. And it's unfortunate that at times it's been contentious, but what has been very I'm grateful for is that we've been able to cooperate and work together over the past year and a half, in certain things. And, one of which, and I know there's some media here, and I know there's some questions that I've gotten, and there's been enough media coverage about it, but, one of the trustees, as Committeewoman Murray mentioned, two of the trustees have resigned, including Mr. Gabrielle, and Mr. Gabrielle, and I had asked for his resignation, and Mr. Gabrielle, has sent me this morning his letter of resignation, which I appreciate the fact that Mr. Gabrielle realized what he did was not right and was wrong, and I appreciate the fact that he's doing what's in the best interest of the library and the township by resigning. So I just wanted to say that on behalf of myself and the committee, we appreciate everything that Mr. Gabrielle has done for the library. And I really appreciate the fact that that this issue is now over. Finally, I know you're all here not to hear about me talk about school elections or the library, but you're here to hear us talk about the pool club. And again, as I'll echo the sentiment of the committee here this evening, the pool club is something that we have been monitoring for years, and some of you were here last meeting, some of you may not have been, and I'm not going to rehash everything from the last meeting, but by ordinance, we cannot operate. When it was purchased in 1997, the committee at that time was very adamant and put in the ordinance that we could not operate the facility without sufficient revenue. And as Committeeman Senabrino has mentioned, we have been, since 2008, losing significant revenue. I've seen emails, I've seen flyers out there tonight. If we can dispute the numbers, you can dispute the numbers, you can claim that the numbers aren't wrong. The numbers are what the numbers are. And anyone that looks at the numbers, that looked at the records, will see the same things that we have. And the only reason we've been able to run the facility is because of surplus. Because we were able to generate, I guess in years past, surplus was generated, and that surplus is no longer at our disposal. So by ordinance, by law, we can't run the facility. Mr. Mercantante has worked tirelessly to try to find, from the last meeting, from the releases we put out, somebody that would be willing to potentially look to run the operation for us. Unfortunately, and it's to no discredit to his efforts, there's no one that's going to want to run, or has indicated to us that they would want to run a facility based on, a losing revenue proposition. That's understandable, okay? It's understandable for businesses and and entities to want to act and be able to make a profit, or at least be able to break even. That's what we've had to ultimately do, is break even, which we're not. However, you know, much has come about with respect to the property, and we talked about, you know, we can all agree, each and every one in this room can agree, that facility needs a tremendous amount of money, both from an ADA perspective that needs to be done, and also from just the perspective that the facility is run down. The facility is showing us its age, whether it's pool pumps to cabanas to whatever. The facility needs a severe capital improvement. And we cannot, as the committee mentioned, make a significant capital improvement to a facility that we can't even operate without sufficient revenue. It's not right to you. It's not right to the taxpayers. It's not right to the committee in 1997 who bought the facility to prevent the Home Depot, or for whatever their rationale was. It's just not a business that we can continue to be in, and that's unfortunate. However, we do have the ability to what I believe is something that is a much better alternative, and that's the alternative to, because of seeing how much interest, to sell the property with a deed restriction, a recreational deed restriction, have somebody come in there, put the necessary capital into running a recreational facility that, you know, I see the young girls and boys in here. You deserve that. You deserve better than what we have there right now. And we cannot continue to do and to put money into what we have right now. And you know, we all deserve better. It'll be a much better solution. There won't be housing. There won't be business. It'll be something that everyone will be able to utilize. I mean, it could be swimming. It could be any other, sorts of recreation, but, I would think that's where we're going to get a lot of draw. But I'm confident that that's the real best scenario for you, for the township, for the taxpayers, and for the residents. A facility that we can all utilize in a recreational purpose that we just can't afford to do at this point. And we just cannot afford to continue to run as a private swim club facility. And, I know a lot of you, I've read emails and quite, I've gotten emails forwarded and I've heard about business plans and things. And, there's a lot of unfortunate things that I've read, that seems that the committee, isn't looking or doesn't want to keep the swim club. And for any of you that were here the last meeting or have talked to any of us on the street or called or emailed, you would know that's not the case. But this is a decision that's in the best interest of Middletown, of everyone in Middletown at this point. And it's a decision that we have to make. And I'm going to open it up to public comments very shortly. And out of respect for you and out of respect for the committee, what I'm going to say is not what I want to say, and probably not what you're going to want to hear. But unfortunately, this is a decision that we have to make and that we are going to make. And we're not going to be dissuaded from it because we really have no choice but to go. This is a win-win to be able to get to keep it recreational and to not saddle the taxpayers for funding this facility. So, with that said, I'm going to open it up to public comments. As a reminder. If you do want to make comment, you're more than welcome to comment on this or anything else. There is a 5-minute adherence. I'm going to be very strict about that, which I wasn't as strict last time because there are a lot of people here and I have no idea how many you're going to want to talk. But we do ask you to come up, give your name and address, and we'll go from there. So anybody want to make public comment? Yes, sir.
Leo Christophany, 121 Cranberry Court, Shady Oaks, River Plaza. Good evening. Since you, Mayor, have been frank with us and said it is a fait accompli, there's to be no discussion, a decision has been made, you're going to follow through with the plan that is pretty clear, at least to me. There's only one question I have. However you sell the property, and whatever conditions you put under it, such as recreation, whether on the open market or governmental with a private organization making a sale by auction, how much money do you anticipate to realize from such a sale or any kind of sale? And will that money be all dedicated to retiring the debt service on the swim club? That's basically my question. I'll sit down, so I'll resist the temptation to ask another question.
Anyone else? Any public comment?
Answer the question.
Oh, well, the answer, well, I'm sorry, maybe didn't pick up. Yes, the money that we would acquire from the acquisition would pay these debt service, and we would look for a number that would satisfy that, and and the fair value of the property. It's absolute. That's where the money's coming from. I think that's
we wouldn't be doing ourselves any good to talk about what we think it's worth in public if we want to put it out to auction. That would be to our own disadvantage.
But everyone should know that in the auctions under local lands and buildings law, we reserve the right in the ordinance that would do it and in the materials that would be used to publish the auction in the newspaper. Those notices would provide that the committee would reserve the right. So the auctions held, just so everyone understands the process, the open public auctions held after the advertising period and so forth, and after it's been marketed, then the committee would then have to make a final decision by resolution. So it's an ordinance that authorizes the auction, and then a resolution would have to accept whatever the highest bids were that came in. And they would have to be subject to whatever conditions that we placed the auction subject to. And the committee would have 30 or 60 days to accept or reject whatever bids came in, and they would reserve the right. So if the bids came in terribly low and didn't cover that, in all likelihood, they would probably reject it. If it came in enough to cover it, then likely be accepted, but we're not going to project what the price might be.
One other thing that I would add is that when it goes to a private owner, a property that is now tax exempt would become part of the rateable base and would contribute to the taxes.
Oh, that's not fine. Anyone else from the public? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Robert Nance of 320 Brookway, Middletown. Thank you, Mayor Fiore and members of the Middletown Township Committee for this time to speak to you regarding the Middletown Swim and Tennis Club. I just want to mention that I prepared this at 5 minutes, so if I'm not interrupted, it's just a comment statement. We should get through this in 5 minutes. But can people also get 5 minutes of their time if they stand up and ask for 5 minutes?
They can get 5 minutes. You can't pass your 5 minutes.
Okay. I wanted to thank the members of the press for being here also to report. And thank you, citizens, for joining the movement to save the Middletown Swim and Tennis Club, although these recent developments don't sound too good. I am a member of the volunteer group composed of Middletown taxpayers, swim club members, and others who formed a committee called Save Our Swim Club, or SOS, with the sole purpose of keeping our swim and tennis club open and viable for the good of Middletown Township. After careful analysis, it is the opinion of the members of SOS that the Middletown Swim and Tennis Club, hereafter referred to as the club, can continue to be a valuable asset that can remain self-sustaining. Currently, 14 members, including small and large business owners, accountants, and lawyers, have been meeting and formulating plans to address the concerns of the mayor and committee. We have reviewed and discussed the financial statements, ADA requirements, and future capital improvements, and we are confident that our beloved institution that has produced both an Olympic swimmer and elite Navy SEAL is absolutely worth saving. We need you as elected public officials to fulfill your duty and preserve this community asset. We would like the township to know that our committee will work diligently and we will turn the club into a revenue-producing utility in 2012 and beyond. The only way we can do this is if you, the members of the Township Committee, keep it open this summer while we put our plan in place. At the last town hall meeting, it was the understanding of the SOS members that the issue of the club utility would next be discussed on February 21st. We have been preparing a business plan, and our intent is to present the detail of the business plan on February 21st. It was brought to our attention just last Friday evening that the agenda for this evening's meeting includes an item directly related to the sale, disposition, or dissolution of the swim club utility. It was our understanding during the prior Township Committee meeting from comments made by Mr. Nelson that the Harmony Road property was, as you stated this evening, deeded for a specific purpose and that there were no near-term plans for sale of property, which changed fast, because that was actually something that you said there were no terms, but then today
There are no terms right now. We still have a
You're
huge...
gonna vote on it today?
No, we're not. It's a discussion item
Whether
tonight.
a developer was under contract to buy the property, that was the question. This was one of the many options.
And there's still a process that has to go by. We didn't vote on it. This was a discussion. See, this is a workshop meeting, not a... Right.
That ordinance has to be introduced at one meeting, it has to be publicly advertised, then that ordinance has to be adopted, then there's a public hearing on that ordinance separate from that. Then the auction itself would have to be advertised on multiple occasions, and then the auction would have to be held probably a couple of months after that. So there's many months of work and hearings and so forth that would have to take place to commence the sale of the property. Which is why the committee has to get started on it soon, because as you know, there's debt service payments that need to be made, there's budgeting issues that need to be addressed, and those, they need to be addressed by the time of the budget. We need to know what we're doing before we have to submit our budget to the state.
Well, this evening you're in attendance and we're looking for details from you, which you gave us tonight, so the members of the public can have a complete and accurate understanding of the township's plan for the club. We have completed an initial analysis of financials that will be presented by another member of the SOS committee. The analysis indicates that if there aren't any changes, there is a potential that 2012 could possibly be the very first year since the club's purchase 15 years ago that the club might not be entirely self-sufficient with surplus funds, etc. Township up to this date has not paid any additional funds, correct, for the club? It's either, so it's not been a burden on taxpayers, as Mrs. Murray said before. It may in the future be, is that what you were saying?
I didn't say that
It will be
it,
this...
No longer a burden on
There's
taxpayers.
no. It, going forward, it would be, but we cannot, it would.
And there's been the surplus from the utility has been depleted over the last 4 years that has run a deficit, as I think Mr. Santabrino said, or Mr. Massell said, that the fees generated on an annual basis for the last 4 years have not covered the operating expenses of the club and the debt service of the club. Okay, that costs approximately $600,000 a year in total, okay, to operate it. The surplus has been completely drained, and also it should be added that township employees, particularly in the recreation department, which no longer effectively exists, manage the facility and also were utilized to get the facility up and running, all but for the last year, every single year. That was never withdrawn from the utilities budget, but that was an expense incurred indirectly by the township as well. So, and those employees don't exist anymore that did that work. So I just wanted to add that.
If you can just finish your statement, I'll let you finish your statement.
Just another short section. Furthermore, we reviewed the ADA plans that were supplied by the township via an open request. The township's own plan calls for approximately $36,000 worth of improvements to make the club compliant with the ADA regulations. You got a pretty township.
I know, but those are estimates provided in 2008 by a consultant for the township. And I can tell you that they are about 1/3 of the actual costs on all the projects we've done today.
And not the $1 million that you mentioned at the last meeting.
How much is $1 million right here?
About 2016, what did you say, $1 million?
Those for capital.
That's for capital improvements total, not ADA.
Yeah.
Okay, where are those estimates from? Any records? Did you ask for them? You haven't received any capital improvement records from the township? Of $1 million
There was
or?
all sorts of infrastructure improvements that need to be made. The lights in the parking lot need to be replaced. The filtration systems, pumps, the systems.
We can go through the whole...
Not that we know of, though. There isn't anything that we know of that's been requested. Mr. Nelson, as a Shrewsbury resident that doesn't go to the swim club, how vested could you be in this?
Mr. Mans, with all due respect, can you finish your statement, sir?
John Rossinello, a fellow committee member, will discuss in detail the findings from the township's ADA plans for the club. We are evaluating capital improvements to the club, but preliminary estimates do not appear to be anywhere near a very large figure which was mentioned during the council meeting. The estimated cost is being evaluated by SOS members, and the number has yet to be determined and verified. During the January meeting, Mayor Fiore stated that there could be a deficit of $81,000 if the club is open for the 2012 season. The following presentation will illustrate by the Township's own documents that a potential deficit of $81,000 pales in comparison to the $225,000 bond payment that is due. The bond payment would be due for the next 10 years regardless of whether the club is open or not. If the club does not operate, an immediate financial burden would be placed on the taxpayers, which would negatively impact our Township's already tight budget. The key area of concern to you as government officials is that tax dollars not be used to sustain the Middletown Swim and Tennis Club. SOS completely understands that. The solution as to the concern of the 2012 operating deficit and the bond payment due for 2012 will be presented as part of the business plan on February 21st. Finally, I would ask that one or more current Township officials step up and join as a member of the SOS Committee to work as a team to keep the Middletown Swim and Tennis Club an open institution that residents of Middletown Township can be proud of, which would serve as a model for other communities that manage their own pool facilities. Thank you for your time, and I now present Tracy.
I have to call the members up, okay, from the public. You can't just continue to. So, but in response, to be fair, sir, I've seen many emails by you, and you know, that have gone through, that have been forwarded to me by whether it's SOS or whatever the organization's name is, and you know, quite candidly, I wasn't sure if it was from you or for not, but you know, it seems to be that the business plan that I'm reading here, and I'm sure you guys are going to go into it, still doesn't change the fact that we can't. You can say we're going to make all these plan changes. Hold on, sir, I'll give you 5 minutes. You can say you're going to make all of these potential changes. We still cannot open the club without sufficient revenue prior to April 1st. Okay, so again, we're having these meetings. We had these meetings starting in January to get things. That's part of the ordinance. That is exactly explicit in our township ordinance. We cannot. Right. Well, forget about the cap, but we can't start the club. It's actually in the ordinance that there's a certain date on that we have to make sure we have sufficient revenue. But with that said, I've seen many emails of the tactic of, well, let's get the Township Committee to slow down, stop, let's see if we can get them. And oh, by the way, they still got to pay $255,000, so you might as well keep the club open. Well, or $225, whatever the number is. Well, guess what? That's not a good strategy for you as a taxpayer, for the ordinance to even be satisfied. Okay, so it is not. No, a good strategy is to take what the market is looking at bearing. No one is willing to run the club. Sir, again, I'll say, no one is looking to run this club. Many are looking to potentially purchase it if we can get the right price and keep it recreational. To me,
SOS runs the club.
If you would like to buy the club, you're more than welcome to the auction and buy the club.
You weren't saying that if they had a run
you were more than welcome to buy the club. You can't run the club without sufficient revenue. It's still in the township books. You can't just, you can't come to us in August, sir. You can't come to us. No, we're not changing the ordinance, and I think that was clear.
You're changing an ordinance after the fact that
we are not changing an ordinance. We are not changing the ordinance dissolution is different. We're not changing the ordinance to just, we'll pass we'll operate the club, even though the committee in 97 said they would.
Right. The operational cost cannot be incurred, cannot be financed. And absent, you can't have a situation where you say, okay, we'll let you run the club, and then you come to us in August and say, oh, we're $250,000 short. Well, we can't do that. We have to have a municipal budget in place by March 9th, is it now? Or we have to introduce by March 9th. Okay, within a month. Well, that's why if we get a buyer under contract, we can count that in the money. Now, we are going to have to assume the debt service on the utility. There's no doubt about that. However, on a sale, you recover that. That's not, operation costs can't be bonded because they're not recoverable. The debt service, while the township may have to put that $200,000 out this year, upon the sale, that $200,000 will be recovered along with the other capital has been expended throughout the year since 1997 on the club. Okay, so that's recoverable. The operation expenses are not recoverable upon the sale of the club. And that's the difference.
You can't come back to us in September and say, oh, we failed. And it just can't happen. It would be imprudent for any of us to say, let's run the club, let's come on a business plan, even though we don't have sufficient revenue, let's just forget about the ordinance, turn a blind eye, and then September come, oh, well, it didn't work out that right way, sorry. It can't happen.
There
It's
are
not
other-
right.
There are other utilities run by the township that 1,200 people enjoy all year long that only cost $81,000 out of the township's budget.
There are no other utilities, but that's why it was set up as a utility. That's why it was set up as a utility. And this is a private club. There's not anyone can just, this is members only. Not anyone can just utilize it.
She's saying that, but you run it, so
It's
it's not a
quite
private
different.
club.
It is a private club. I mean, you can't just, no one can just go to the club from the community without being a member. Well, obviously that's happened quite a bit. We obviously know that's always been an issue, but you can't, it's much different, excuse me. It's much different than a baseball field or a, you know, a library or something else. Much different than public. Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Peter Wilkins, 2 Alpha Court, Middletown. It wasn't my intention to speak. I attended the last meeting, and I just want to be clear on something now. Accepting the financial issues and understanding them, and also hearing now that there's nobody on the block, so to speak, to operate it. Also hearing that by May 19th, March 9th, you have to have a budget. As a taxpayer, so you're pretty much basically saying you're going to have to find a buyer on March 9th.
No, what we're saying.
Or else you're going to have to potentially absorb $225,000.
No,
We would recover it on a sale.
We have to absorb more. We have to absorb 1.3 million, 4 million of the debt service.
Right.
You know, which effectively is backed by the full faith and credit of the township already, but it's moving numbers from one place to another on the debt service. But yes, we have to assume that on the township's books.
And Brian, you're going to need to pretty much have an idea of this
That's why we're working on it now.
It's advised.
all I would say as a taxpayer is, again, sometimes you can say, what's the justification for continuing something? Sometimes the best decision is no decision. Just be careful. If you potentially have a buyer that might take 9 months, and you can, and I understand about the parameters of the statute. I was here in '97, and I understand it in many ways. From that side of it, appreciate that you wouldn't go into something you can't operate. But I think there's been a little bit too much, in my opinion. It's been a little too short a notice to the taxpayers, and it's just a little too cut and dry. You know, we still believe that Middletown is a place where there's a tremendous amount of public right to life or right to issues. And if you continue taking it and use as a justification to take them away, the fact that it doesn't benefit every taxpayer, probably the only thing we have left that every taxpayer uses is this committee and the police. You know?
And the library?
I'd like to suggest as a taxpayer.
Everybody's welcome to use the library.
Not as a school club member, but
Don't have to be a member of the library.
all I'm saying is, please, in the interest, as a taxpayer, not as a 30-year swim club member, you know, most people don't do that. I just feel that sometimes if you can't get the right thing done in 5 weeks, I think to the other constituents of the town, justification could be that go this far.
One of the other things you should know, why, you know, yes, we have to do it because there are dates that we have to stick by, but, you know, we're also don't want to do this. People have summers to plan for. You know, there are other places they can join. There's Homedale, there's Hazlitt Beach pool clubs. I don't know why, but the fact is that we are stuck here, and in trying to turn it around as if, you know, we have a choice is not.
No, we don't want a fire sale.
No,
we're not of a statute.
Well, we're not, and just to be clear, the township is not anticipating to have the proceeds of this for this year's budget. Okay, that's not happening. But we have to submit a budget to the state. That budget has to set forth what the township is going to raise. We set forth, we get the number as to what's raised in taxation from the past year, what this overall assessed value, what we know that number is going to be. And we can only increase our amount raised by taxation under the 2% cap levy law by 2%. We have to submit that number, and we have to say where that money is coming from now. So
that you have to really separate the capital from the operational costs. So if the township were to provide the operational costs, those would have to be budgeted for now. We would have to show in that budget that gets submitted to the state where the money for those operational costs is coming from. The only place that could come from is from laying employees off, which we've done the last 2 years. And it would have to come from somewhere else that isn't a statutorily mandated thing like the library money, which is mandated by statute. There's only about a very small percentage of the municipal budget that the Township Committee can even touch by law. That's not statutorily mandated. We have to, you might have just read about the new bullying law and the council local mandates. And we have to even train crossing guards that are township employees in anti-bullying tactics and things like that because of that state law. So there's all these statutorily mandated state laws that we have to first commit funds to, and then we have to be within the 2% cap, which I believe only allows us to increase the budget by a couple $100,000 for the entire township, for every department for the entire year, if that even. That's not even. So
look, ladies and gentlemen, from a quality of life perspective, if we were looking to sacrifice quality of life, we'd be looking at getting the highest and best use for that property. Okay, this committee is trying to increase the quality of life by hopefully getting a buyer that's going to come in there, cover the debt service payment, so that the township's out of the swim club business that's not working, and is going to be able to put a recreational facility that would be more beneficial to the quality of life. So if the township wasn't taking, if the committee wasn't taking quality of life into perspective, there'd be no deed restriction. I mean, so, I get it, and believe me, no one wants to go through this whole statement here, but, again, there are things that we can do, things we can't do, and we can't work on a whim and a prayer and hope it works. That's what we've been doing for the past 3 years, and it hasn't worked. The past 3 years, we've had a director that has come and said, oh, we'll do this, change this, do that, change this, bring this vendor in, do that, and guess what? The numbers still haven't worked. So, it's not in our best interest or anyone's best interest to operate that. Yes, sir.
John Russinello, 7th Floor Place. Mr. Nelson, if you could help me out a little bit on the timeline. I was listening carefully to you on what you were talking about on the sale and the legal process of creating an ordinance to dissolve the utility, move forward, post in the paper that the intent to sell, the process of initiating the sale, and then the actual taking it out to bid. You have a timeline based on it.
I mean, the earliest you could probably do it because you have to advertise and you also want to market it. Typically, when we've done property sales in the past, we've used the auctioneers to do that, and they do the art auction, they do the marketing of it to, all over the state and maybe even out of state, depends on the type of property. Like if we sold a couple of properties last year, we used an auctioneer. They hold an open public auction here in this, this room. Anybody can come in with a certified check and put a deposit down. There's usually a minimum deposit requirement. But I mean, the earliest you would probably have that would, after the adoption of the ordinance, the actual advertising period, and some time for them to market the auction, you're probably looking at late spring, early summer to be able to actually complete that and get something under contract.
2012?
Oh, this year, yeah, this year. It takes many months. It's not something that you can do overnight by function of the law and by the practicalities of just getting it done, the surveys and title work and all the other due diligence that needs to be done, and the period by which they have that opportunity, even after their bids are accepted, to do their due diligence on the property there and before. And that's why I was saying that it's to be clear that there's no anticipation that the facility would be sold prior to March 9th. That's just not going to happen. But the township has to say anything that the township is going to spend. You might even saw on tonight's agenda. We have to pass temporary budgets before the CFO can cut a single check to say, has to show where that money's coming from, what its specific account number that money's coming from, and where it's being spent on. And he can't cut a single check to a single vendor, to the utility company, to anybody. He can't even cut payroll until that's specified exactly and submitted to the state where that money's coming from and what it's being spent on. So the issue is not that the club would be sold by March 9th. The issue is that he would have to, the CFO would have to find some other line item from somewhere in the municipal budget where they take that money, the $500,000 or $600,000 for the debt service, and he's going to have to do the debt service. He's going to have to figure out where to bring that from. The debt service, however, isn't subject to the 2% cap. The operations are subject to the 2% cap. So the debt service is a little easier to deal with than the operations, but he can elaborate on that more. But that's the relevance of the March 9th deadline.
We're assuming that you're going to be able to possibly get this sold by beginning of summer or midsummer.
I mean, that would be the
what we have been seeing with what your discussions were with entities coming in to even run the pool club, it's been falling way short of the mark in your expectations of people stepping forward to want to take
Not that
on.
are interested.
There's a difference between, there's a difference between wanting to run a club and wanting to buy the property and run the club without the township owning the club. So there's been absolute zero interest, despite the overtures and meetings that we have had with organizations that you're probably all very familiar with over the years and over this year, and with organizations that have even said, hey, talk to us about the swim club. There's been zero interest in someone saying, township owned, will run the operation. There's been a tremendous amount of interest in saying, we'll buy the property, put our own capital infrastructure into the property, and be on our way with a business plan that that they find suitable. So there is a stark difference in interest in that.
And we're not looking, the township is not looking to hold a note on this, you're looking for a clean break.
Correct.
Clean break. Will there be any stipulations in the sale of the property? That
Recreational.
Recreational, I understand that. There's a restriction on the deed. But what about the possibility of the buyer coming in, finding out after 2 years that they can't build a default on a note, and now we've got overgrown grass in the area? We have a mechanism in place for that.
When is our problem at that point?
I understand.
We're not holding the note.
I understand. But now you've got a deed restriction on a property that has to be maintained as recreational. You've got an entity that can't support the property and defaults on a note, and you've got a chunk of property in Middletown that just can't be sustained, that's going to become a vast wasteland. How do we justify that?
That's a very large assumption.
And just like any other property that goes into foreclosure in the township, we contact the bank and we require them. We've actually subpoenaed CEOs of national banks who, believe me, I've taken the phone calls from their lawyers that weren't too happy about it, to appear in municipal court in Middletown Township to cut the grass on a house that's in foreclosure. So by law, they're required to maintain the property to a certain standard if that were to happen, and we do very actively.
I see where you're going, but you're assuming,
speculation.
right, you're speculating something that we can't control.
Keep in mind something. By selling the property with a deed restriction, the limit of use limits the value of the property. So people are going to buy it knowing at a lesser price than they would if it was just sold without any restrictions, for sure. But they're going to buy it knowing what their intended use of it. They're business people. They're going to make a strategic decision. These are going to be people who own other facilities, other places, who run them. So they have some experience in doing it. So you've got to figure that they factored in the discounted price into their business plan to make it work. Now, is it possible that in a few years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, they can't any longer make a go of it? Yeah, that happens all the time with businesses. So what do? They sell to another business. They sell to somebody else who wants to run a similar type of business. That could happen. We can't guarantee against that. But the reality is the price of the property will be discounted by the deed restriction, and that discounted price should make it more viable for them to operate a recreation facility as part of their business model.
One last question. Could you share some of the entities that are interested?
No.
And no interest in holding this up, holding on to it for a year or two? I understand. Holding on to it for a year or two, taking the $80,000 hit year in, year out.
It will be more than $80,000.
Not to mention the fact that the ordinance doesn't permit us to do that. We'd have to change it or change
I know that, but you've also said you can change the ordinance.
It was $80,000 based on last year's numbers.
With all due respect, I know the committee has discussed this before, and we're not going to change the ordinance. The ordinance was there to protect the use of the facility.
I understand that, but you've also said you were willing a change in ordinance to dissolve.
That's procedural.
That's, we have to do that by law. If we're not operating the club, we have to dissolve.
It's a different type of ordinance change. This is procedural.
Look, we can change the ordinance, it doesn't matter, the money's not there. Under the 2% cap law, even if we change the ordinance, you still need to find the money under the operations, under the budget. It doesn't. The ordinance is.
Those things are apples and oranges.
Thank you.
Give us a chance to present to you.
Leo, I can't have you. You've used your time. I can't do it. You can't. I'm sorry. I'll catch you after the meeting, though. I promise. Thanks. Yes, ma'am.
My question is, this recreational facility, are we talking about an ice hockey rink? Why the secrecy as to...
We're not talking ice hockey or swimming. We're not talking whatever. It's going to be whoever wants to purchase it has the right, so long as it's recreational. And I don't think we should be making further restrictions to lower the value of the property that much further.
Well, respectfully, there's a big difference in installing a hockey rink. My daughter is an ice hockey player. She's the only girl on JV at Middletown South. I have a very bad feeling that we're going to be substituting a pool for yet another hockey rink. And that, to me...
Do we have another hockey rink?
Well, we have Red Bank, we have a brand new George Haviland's facility, we've got Bridgeport, we've got them all over the place.
Well, there's plenty of them that people won't open.
Well,
plenty of them around.
but I think that's, when you're, with your secrecy with respect to what you're putting in there.
It's not secret. There's no secret, man. That's an incorrect statement.
It's gonna have to put a site plan or before the planning board.
There's no secret.
But how come you can't tell us if anyone is interested in running a pool?
We've said that. They are not interested in running a pool that the township owns.
Oh, but
yes, there are.
The property. I don't mean to interrupt you, Ron, but I want some answers here.
There are entities that would be willing to purchase it, I guess, as a pool. Whether they become the highest bidder, we have no control over that.
Okay, but my question is, with respect to an entity that wants to purchase the property, are you having discussions with anyone who wants to purchase the property and operate it as a pool?
Yes.
Because as far, okay, yes, that's a great answer. But the way I see it is that if it's not a pool, it's going to be an ice hockey rink or something that the elderly people of this community are not going to have access to, that the younger children, people are not going to have a camp to go to, a day camp, that the working mothers are not going to have a place to bring their kids, that if it's another ice hockey rink, our kids, where are our kids supposed to learn how to swim? Where can we get another Olympian, another Navy SEAL? We don't need another ice hockey rink. We need you to take some time and evaluate this and have some respect for your constituents who elected you with respect to taking time and considering this. We're talking just, I think, about $80,000, $100,000.
You're using numbers of old numbers. That's the problem. Every year the deficit gets worse. You failed to comprehend that from the last meeting when you.
I don't have the transcript from the last meeting.
Okay, well, we spoke about this. Well, respect is a two-way street. Well, she just did disrespect the committee and said, you know, we have no respect for the constituents, is what you just said.
Well, it doesn't seem to be, maybe that was the proper term.
Okay.
It just seems like we're not getting clear answers to things. The documents that they needed were not provided as capital improvements, is my understanding. In any event, I don't want to belabor it. I just find it rather offensive that you're doing this in such, what seems to be such a rush. I understand perhaps that there was a deficit over 3 years, but nothing, as far as I know, came out of the taxpayers' dollars with the exception of some staff who were working at the club, opening it up.
But it will come out of taxpayers' dollars going forward, and it cannot.
But you haven't even heard the plan yet. And the other question I have is, who amongst us here is sending Robert Mance's emails, which I'm assuming were private emails, not supposed to be
Those
published?
emails were to thousands of people.
How did they get to you?
Well, that's, I'm not going to disclose that.
I just don't get it. I don't get it. Why?
Well, people are allowed to forward the mayor or committee emails too. I mean, and that's what happened here. Okay.
I think these emails might have been sent to 15 people. I don't know who sent them.
So you don't want us to be secretive,
But you want to be secretive.
No, it's not secretive. It's just, we're just curious. I'm curious how his email came to go to you when it was never directly addressed to you. It seems to
We
be
invited you
forwarded.
in the committee, so there's no secrets. We asked you, one of you.
Today you did.
Well, let me just,
Okay,
let me just address this issue of rushing. You know, that's nonsense. We just talked about the fact that even if we decided today that we were going to auction this property, it probably wouldn't happen until June or so, May, June at best. That would be the fastest scenario. So we're not rushing anything. If sometime between now and the time the township did auction the property, someone presents a business plan that makes sense and miraculously to make a go of it, the township has plenty of time to change direction and do that. So if we started any later, we'd be making the decision even later to sell the property. We'd be more likely to run into debt. So we have to start now because there's a lengthy process involved to getting to the point where you auction the property. Between now and then, lots of things can still be discussed and plans can be looked at. They've got to be realistic. But, you know, but there's time between now and the time the property is auctioned to decide to do other things. But we have to start now or else we'll be on into the end of the year. Or we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't start early enough.
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, hi, my name is Tracy Lois, and I live at 45 Gainesville Terrace. I just want to start, this is just a side thing. Handle Wood Swim and Racket Club, actually, they have not been contacted, and they said that they would manage the pool club. Oh. So just to let you know, this is, okay?
Well,
Just to let you know, if
you
you
can
guys...
submit that over
Okay.
and we'll talk to them.
Okay, the other thing is, I'd like to give this out here. I prepared something, if you guys don't mind. Okay, no, do the top. You can see what I'm talking about now. Okay. Now. Okay. My name is Tracy Lewis. I am a CPA. I worked for Samuel Klein as a government auditor, and one of the towns that I audited was Livingston. Then I went over to another accounting firm. Please, can I ask you a favor? Can you just pay attention to me and not read that? I'll go over the reports and everything. Okay.
Tracy, you just had, and we can always have two, so.
I'm sorry.
You and I have discussed many things, so, I mean, this is something we can also talk about after the 5 minutes too. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Okay, 5 minutes.
No, after the 5 minutes
after the
also,
5
I'm
minutes.
happy to always entertain. We've talked to you many times about other issues.
Okay. Now, I've also audited the town of Asbury Park, and I understand how frustrating it is for you guys up there because you're looking at these numbers and you're trying to get through to us your point. I want you to know I've been sitting at that pool club for 7 years, and as an accountant and as someone who knows internal control, I am frustrated sitting there. I understand how you say you have fiduciary concerns to the taxpayers. There's also fiduciary responsibilities to the pool club owners. When I look at these numbers, I have requested the cash receipts and the cash disbursements. When I look at information, we will go over it later because I would like to even request more. This pool club actually can make money. You look at those numbers, the top number that the first page there is, okay, it's the profit before the bond payments.
Well,
And I know it's before the bond payments. Exactly, exactly. That's what you're saying. Sitting here, and you can laugh, sitting here though, you can see how even in the worst year with the membership, even in the worst year, you made $124,000 before the bond payments. I understand that the bond payments are still due. Flip to the next page with the bond. Okay, flip to the last page if you'd like to, because I know my time is running out. In 2007, a $300,000 bond was issued. I try to think of the capital improvements. I've tried to look through your audits, and I've tried to find a list of your fixed assets. What all this the $2,612,000 that was spent on capital improvements on that pool club, we have $1.4 million that are just improvements alone. Because the pool itself costs $1.225, so you have $1.4 million worth of improvements. Those monies there, I'd like to know what the improvements are. I'd like to try to find out
where.
where.
Were from 97?
From 97, from the very beginning to now. That's, okay. You would actually have to look at the ordinances. So I would look at all the ordinances. But when I think of 2007, I think of one of the things that was built in 2007 was that big shaded area. Okay? That big shaded area that was in that pool club. Now, in my opinion, if you guys are already in a lot of debt, why would you build that big shaded area?
This committee, most of them aren't even here in 2000.
Okay, and I understand, but because of what happened in the past, when I tell you I'm looking at these numbers, it was not run as efficiently as it could be running. There's no internal control over at that pool club.
You're exactly right.
What?
You're
I know.
100% right.
I know. I've been sitting there for 7 years.
You're 100%, which is why we shouldn't be in the business.
What?
You're exactly predicating why the township should not be in that business.
No. Well, it's predicating why you should follow. It says
You're not counting the debt service, Ms. Lewis, and I know your time is
the debt
almost up, but
service
you're
is
not
going to be
counting
over
the debt
in
service.
6 years.
But if we got
In
it,
6
more
years.
improvements, it's not.
What?
There's still many more improvements that need to go that are going to increase that number.
Okay, I am telling you right now, when I look at those numbers and I look at and I compare 2008, 2010, 2011, there's a lot of questions involved in those.
There's no doubt that the club makes revenue. Okay, there's no doubt that you've put the receipts and the disbursements. There's no doubt you're looking at, and I'm just going to guesstimate on your projection here that the receipts are what were brought in by fees and other. The disbursements were what it cost us to run the facility from a labor perspective. What you're missing here are the debt services. And further, listen, we can sit here all night and we can all take a ride over to Harmony Road, tomorrow morning. You and I both know that this $1.4 million or whatever number you're quoting that's in debt service or improvements right now that are still outstanding or whatever the number is outstanding, I don't know if you have it here, that number should probably double to get that club to even where it was in 97.
If that club was run,
if
that
wasn't,
club, what?
It wasn't, and that's the issue.
It wasn't? Okay. 100%. That club, there were no internal controls. Okay, because I can compare different numbers, and I don't want to sit here.
Everyone who's come raised.
But we only can move forward. We only move forward from here, which is what we want to do.
We only move forward from here.
We only
When you
move forward
talk
from here.
about the taxpayers, we're all taxpayers. When you're
That's
talking
we.
about the taxpayers and you're saying it's not fair to them, well, it's not fair to the pool club owners that hundreds of thousands of dollars went through here and hundreds of thousands more money.
Which is why we're going to try to do what we're doing on a
Well, if that
forward-looking
pool
basis.
club, if they're not called up,
We've had conversations about many things. Okay, we've talked about Shorecrest and police presence and all this other stuff. I mean, many times we've had many conversations.
They were actually.
And you know what we're up against. I helped you start the neighborhood watch. You know what we're up against. So to come here tonight, and believe me, I appreciate what you've done, and I appreciate what you do for the neighborhoods and what you do for the swim club. But to come here tonight and say, as taxpayers, we, want you to pay for this, and then you come to me in the committee and say, well, as residents of Shorecrest, we need more police. Well, that's the decision that we have to make here, that 60,000 people don't utilize the swim club, and that you're now going to spread that apart.
I'm asking you to be efficient.
Well,
I'm asking you to be efficient. That pool club, you didn't give us the chance to do the proposal. If we did a proposal, I'm telling you right now, that last... I'm sorry, what was that?
We can't afford to be wrong. That's the problem. We were the last 3 years by keeping it open using surplus. Maybe this proposal's 3 years old, 3 years behind. Maybe that's the problem. But we have to move forward at this point. Everyone who's come to a swim club utility meeting, you can open the minutes, you can look at the minutes. As a matter of fact, I'll bring them to the next meeting if you come to my meetings, to my office hours. The fact of the matter is, everyone has said for the last 3 years that the business model has been broken. And we've tried to make changes, and we've tried to make improvements, and the fact of the matter was, anyone that's come to the meeting has told us what deplorable conditions Pool A, Pool B, the kiddie pool, whatever the case may be, have been. Just validating why we shouldn't be in the business.
Who's the one who monitors the spending of the debt issue?
Debt issuance?
The debt. When you guys made that, when that debt was issued, 1.4 million above the cost of the pool club.
In 97.
Not just in 97, through the whole length of the pool club.
Swim club utility?
Yeah, who keeps, okay, but it also states that residents are supposed to be on board, that, where was that thing? I printed that out. Residents are supposed to be involved as well. I've requested to be involved, and...
The swim club utility meetings are public meetings.
I'm sorry, what?
The swim club utility meetings are all public meetings.
But they're supposed to be like representatives from the pool club that are residents in Middletown that are on that.
There were always people that have come to the utility meetings. There were always 1 or 2 people that have come to utility meetings.
You kind of know that if I knew about it, I'd be there. I mean,
whether you knew
if
or
I
not,
asked
always
so
were.
many times,
I
didn't
can point certain people out that have been at those meetings in the past. Tracy, we're going to have to wrap up.
Okay.
We're around on 10 minutes.
Okay, well, I really feel bad about this.
Ma'am, I called her. Yes, no.
How are you?
I'm Charlie. I went to the tennis club when I was 5 years old.
Your address, please.
On 118 Froman's Drive. So I went there when I was 5 years old. I knew Sue. So that was a long time ago. I don't want to tell you many years. But I have to say, I'm very disappointed in Middletown. One, for you, Mayor, you're acting like you're a king and ruler rather than somebody that's listening to people, and I find that very disheartening. That's not the Middletown I know, and that's not the Middletown I raised my son in. And the Middletown that my family lived on Spruce Drive for 30-something years. What I have to say is no, you're talking back to me. This is my 5 minutes, isn't it?
Okay, I'll wait till you 5 minutes.
Please. What I'd like to say is, my son is now at Georgetown. He's a senior. He's going to be an Olympian. His first job was at the swim club. I think many people in this place, their kid's first job was at the swim club. It's not just a dollar value, and I know people have said this before, but this is a community. There's very few places in Middletown that are sort of a community, that are built together, that our children are an important commodity. It can't just be dollars and cents. My son is now trying to be an Olympian. He's trying to make the world crew team. He's going to go to Lithuania. His first job was at that Middletown Swim and Tennis Club. He learned to swim there. I learned to swim there. So I think just to be decent, just give people a chance that have, gone there 48 years ago. Give them a chance to have their say. Then, if it is the best opportunity, then they'll go along with it. But to shove things down people so quickly, that doesn't make them feel comfortable. And I'm very disappointed in you, Mayor. Thank you.
Oh, ma'am. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but the committee, to say that I control the whole committee, who obviously has given their own comments, that's something that disappoints me, that there'd be that type of thought process out there. And believe me, I don't want to do this. Nobody wants to do this, but we have to look out for 70,000 people. We have a 2% cap budget. And if you look at anything in this economy that we've had to do, we've had to make sacrifices. And whether it's sacrifices with employees, whether it's sacrifices with services, whether it's the Middletown Day, so to speak, we've had to sacrifice. And to ask me or the committee to make a sacrifice because of an individual benefit, people use different things around the town, but you have to look at the vast majority. And to pass this on to the majority of Middletown residents when 1,200 people or less are utilizing it, to me that would be not what I was ever elected, this committee was elected to do, or what the committee in 1997 set it up for. So again, I apologize if you have that thought. It's very disheartening to me that you have that thought that I control the whole committee, but I don't. Thank you, ma'am. Oh, I'm not a king and rule, I promise you. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am, excuse me.
Oh, no, that's kind of disrespectful.
No, well, when she raises her hand, I'll be happy to, you just don't walk up to the microphone, Ms. Bell. If you just acknowledge, I'll be happy to acknowledge you and call you up. Everyone else is following the procedure. Yes, ma'am.
Obviously, sales will go through, what we would keep it open this summer. Is there any possible way, is there some definitive thing? We give us a dollar figure, we give us what it would take. You're saying insurance is now you have to have a date, know what you have for April, where did that come from? I have no idea, since you've never been before, you never knew how much money you're gonna get by April. So all of a sudden you come up with this new tactic, but what is there any possible chance? This year, and get to sell it and do your thing and whatever.
It's highly unlikely. If someone comes up with a $600,000 check and says, we can open the club, obviously we can talk about that.
So why do we have the check in full now, and we never had to do that?
Because in the past, understand, no, we're not changing rules. Listen, every year the township, the utility would look at the club and do an analysis based upon the membership costs, right? Membership fees and projected number of members and projected generally on the prior year and use that as a basis to develop a budget to operate the club. The problem has been is that in the last 3 years, the number of members has declined steadily, and in order to make the club break even, the town has had to go into the club's surplus. There's no more surplus left to go into. So what you're suggesting is if we run it for one more year, some people will suggest, we have a plan, we have ideas, and it might work, but it might not. And the question the committee has to deal with is, well, what if it loses more money again, like it has for the last 3 years? And then in the next year it loses again. You start digging a deeper and deeper hole. Then someone's going to say, you're going to have a room full of people saying, I can't believe you didn't deal with this in 2012. How'd you let it run for another 2 or 3 years and continue to lose money?
We're not asking. We're not asking. 1 year.
What is 1 year going to accomplish? So next year.
What about if we had deposits and said?
Here's my point, though. Here's my point.
Maybe we can all come with
the point is that if we did what you suggested and kept it open for 1 more year, we'd be having this very meeting in January 2013. Right? I mean, what is 1 year going to do? It's not dealing properly with a long-term issue. The club cannot be operated with Band-Aids, opening it 1 more year and 1 more year. But we've seen. Hold up, let me finish.
I said we go for the sale. 1 year, knowing the sales will be
Don't have the money. You need the money. This is the second year that we're subject to.
I really like to know why we didn't have it before.
Because we use surplus.
You use surplus to close the floor for the last 4 years.
We use surplus.
You cut spending and use surplus.
We know that.
We know that.
We're at the end of the road.
So it would be foolish for us to open it knowing that the rest of the taxpayers would have to subsidize it this year.
The ordinance opened the ordinance.
And we would have to include that money in the budget.
No,
What kind of open-minded council is that?
that's just what you want to hear. That's not what we said. Here, well, here, listen, I'll repeat it again, okay? Try to get it. Look, what we've said is that if we're going to sell the property, we have to start that process now. It takes months and months and months to get that accomplished. So we have to start that now. What I said was, in the meantime, if somebody submits a business plan to us that makes sense financially, that doesn't wind up being a burden on taxpayers, we listen to that. There's months to make that decision. Now, realistically, you don't have a lot of time to get members signed up and get employees lined up and all of that. But until the property is sold, there's still time to consider other types of business scenarios. If people want to propose them to us, we'll listen to them. But in case none of those work out, we have to start the process today of getting ready to sell the property later this year. In case we have to, we can get out of it if someone proposes something in May that makes sense to keep it for another year. We listen to that. But we have to start now. We can't never.
But I actually can't ask one question. What's the dollar? Saying we have to ask.
It's about $600,000.
$600,000. Do you can pull checks and have saying it has to be?
We're not going to have a negotiation with you, but if someone wants to propose something to us, we'll listen.
We would have to be able to put that money in the budget. You would have to be able to put that money in the budget by March 9th to know that we have a source of revenue. It doesn't, look, that's exactly the problem. This is exactly the problem. The money isn't there.
They're saying, I'm not.
You're ignoring, you're just
But
ignoring.
the capital only needs to be.
Mayor, I just want to say one thing before the next person gets up to speak. My daughter also worked there. That was her first job in the pool club. And everybody on this dais acknowledges what an excellent facility it is. That's not even the question anymore. We are dealing in the year 2012. After the worst recession, and that's still not over. I don't care what numbers come out of Washington. It's not. It's probably going to get worse before it gets better. We have to deal with the budget in its entirety, not just one element of it. We ended Middletown Day last year because we couldn't afford it. We laid people off 2 years in a row. It has to be 50 or 60 people we let go. These are people's livelihoods. We couldn't do anything to save them. So this is not something that we're doing on a whim or something that we really have a choice to say, well, we can do it, but we won't. So it's not a matter of talking us into it. This is reality. We have to deal with this. It's been set up here. The 2% cap is immovable. It's not the old cap, the cap of old that was full of Swiss cheese. It was like a sprinkler had the old cap. So this is what we have to deal with now. So this is not anything that's elective. This is reality, and this is where we're coming from. So we have to think of 67, 68,000 people and the entire budget, not just one element of it. Thank you.
Kathy Restinello, 7 Barn Place, Middletown, New Jersey. I beseech you, because first of all, I've seen your jobs, and I don't know. Yeah. And I'm sure no one else wants it. But we have given Middletown in our hands, from our hands to you. And we have given it with trust, with hope. And history will come back to haunt us if you do not err on the side of caution. Because when it's gone, it's gone. And this town will have great loss because it is gone. So when history comes back to haunt us and say, what do we have for the children of this town? What is a community base that, yes, we have the library, yes, we have these things, but when it's gone, it will be gone forever. It will never come back. So please, I beseech you, think before you act. Think about what history will show. This will be a failure to our community. 10 years ago when it was bought, it was a success to the community. It was a saving grace to our community. This will be looked at as a failure. Middletown will have failed, and I hate to say it, but the ultimate responsibility will be from you. And I don't think that's great history. And I don't think any of you really want it, because you know in the end what it means to our community when you lose something that's important, either the smallest to the greatest. So you have to think of what history will show and what this failure will mean to our community. Whether you use it or not, you will drive past it and you will see a gaping empty hole. And what will happen if someone buys it and they fail? Ultimately, the failure is yours because you have chosen to take this responsibility. So please, please, err on the side of caution. Think before you act, because it will never return.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My voice is still a little shot from Giants win. My name is Nick Fabian. I live at 216 Geary Drive. I'd like to talk about recycling. Let's move away from the swim club. I believe Dr. Scharfenberger wrote in one of his Middletown Matter magazines, recycling is mandatory. Is that not the case in Middletown? Does everybody agree with that?
We agree.
Does it not cost Middletown extra in bulk fees when recycling material is put out the street for garbage and being paid by us taxpayers? Would you guys not agree with that? Do we have anybody in place that manages curbside recycling?
Yeah.
Who? Is it code enforcement or is it somebody at a Teddy's office?
We don't have an officer, we don't have an enforcement officer.
We don't have an officer in Middletown. The size of the town.
Not only for recycling, no.
Largest municipality in Monmouth County, and we don't have somebody to answer that. Well, I gotta tell you, I see tons of recycling materials being put out to the street for garbage every day. Every Tuesday and Thursday, or Wednesday and Friday, whatever day it is.
Well, some places are the same day.
Well,
You're saying they're taking.
for garbage, it's put out for garbage on garbage night, not on recycling night.
But it's, they're the same day.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is on garbage night in my area where
In your
that's
neighborhood,
on.
you're in the garbage district?
In my area, in my zone.
Right, are you in the district where the township, you pay your taxes to pick up the garbage?
No.
Does Jersey Central pick up yours?
No.
You have like a private, you have private?
It's, recycling goes out on typically on a Sunday night, Monday, give me an example, cans and glass were just picked up.
Right, who picks up your trash collection?
Who picks it up?
Is it Jersey Central? Is it
No.
Central Jersey?
It used to be Mark Powell, the new guy now.
So you pay a quarterly fee for garbage collection?
Yeah.
You hire your own.
No, I don't think I hire my own. I do my taxes. I hire. I'm in the Harmony section.
You're in the district. And you're right, there are some people that do put their recycling in their garbage.
Okay, well, we got tons of recycled materials that are being put out for garbage. That it's costing us money. We're losing money in recycling, which I've heard you echo that many times in Middletown Matters. We're losing money, and it's costing us money on the other end to get rid of it, right? And for the largest municipality in Monmouth County, we have nobody overseeing us. I think that's kind of sad.
Well, we don't have nobody overseeing. We don't have.
You just said we don't have anybody.
No, I said we don't have an officer dedicated for recycling enforcement. We do have a staff that does monitor this. It's our contract with our recycling and our garbage collector. They're not allowed to take recycling.
We're leaving it up to the garbage collectors to check to see if what's recycling, what's not?
We do have some staff members that, go around in there and check, especially if we receive complaints. We don't have anyone dedicated for that, but it's checked by our staff, to understand, it's checked by our contractors, and they're licensed, they have an obligation not to collect recycled materials with the garbage collection. Do they violate that? Do they not check every can? Do they take things they're not supposed to? Probably.
Well, I
also have to take that to the county. It's also inspected again as it's dumped on the floor.
Yeah.
So there are a few levels of inspection there. Not to say that.
Well, it's pretty obvious, I gotta tell you.
There is, and education was our main avenue for trying to stop this. And it's been effective to an extent.
Okay. Well, I think that there's a little something extra that we could be doing to maybe generate a little revenue in this direction, and maybe not have it cost us a little extra revenue on the pickup side. On one note, on the other note, isn't it still illegal to park on fire lanes? Don't we have fire protection people in Middletown that enforce parking in fire lanes? Well, I gotta tell you, all of these strip malls that we have, it's getting out of control. We're not doing anything about it. And I tell you, I think our fire prevention needs to step it up and start showing up in these malls and writing people tickets for parking their freaking cars in a fire lane, not even in them, running, leaving them running out of the park. Many. ShopRite is a disaster. Okay? The cops don't want to deal with it, and I know plenty of them. Okay? Again, this is another tool that we have available to us to generate a little extra revenue for people that are committing violations. Maybe not the first time, maybe not the second time, but you know what, the third time, you should be getting a ticket. Okay? These are a couple of ideas about things that maybe, you know, we can utilize in our benefit, don't you think? Okay, thank you.
You know, that's a very good point. One of the things that is sort of encouraging is that the recycling numbers have been going up steadily. We get a lot of complaints too, hey, my neighbor's putting out his recycling with his regular garbage. So it is frustrating. There's 23,000 residences in Middletown, so to get them to turn around and change a lifetime of habits is very difficult. We are trying, and we've been not as successful as quickly as I would like to see, but it's something that we're working on now. We're going to change with the streams, possibly mixed streams, which should make it easier. We will try and be more aggressive with that. That's one thing. The extra revenue, that will help offset some of the contractual increases that we have and the health benefit increases. We need all the help we can get with that because that's unforgiving and there's nothing you can do about that. But that's a very good point.
Well, I know, as Teddy has brought out, that his department is extremely understaffed, and I know we have one of the largest police departments in Monmouth County. You know, it wouldn't be a bad idea maybe for some of these guys to take notice as they're driving around.
One of the things
that's just an informative checklist type of thing.
One of the things that we are looking at, the garbage contract comes up shortly, actually. One of the things that we are at, is actually one of the resolutions tonight, one of the things that we are seriously considering is single stream recycling, to see if potentially the, while you get less for the, for the materials, will the bulk volume, because people are putting it all out,
I think,
so we are definitely, it's a big concern.
Even a basic door knocker, if you took a zone, if you took the election district zone, and you started in zone A,
when you get your
and you had somebody, little door knocker that says, hey, guess what, you're not putting your recycling to where they need to be. I mean, a couple of times people are going to be aware. You tell them, you're going to get a fine here if you're dirty enough, it's $75 or something, people are going to step it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Linda Bound, Mayport. Getting back, by the way, just on the note about recycling, what is the compliance ratio right now? Do we know what that is? Is it 50% of people compliant?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, just getting back to the pool club for a minute. There was a couple points I wanted to make. There was a lot of talk about finding a way to efficiently operate the club. And I think that there's actually more that's being considered that's really not being said, and by considered I mean by the township. That is that even if the club were self-sustaining, even if the public could come up with a great plan to run the club, to cover the operating costs and even to generate a little bit of revenue, that there is actually something to be gained by the township by selling, other than just avoiding the operating costs. Mr. Fury, earlier you were asked if the revenue from the sale of the club would be used to retire the debt, and you responded,
yes.
The debt service, to cover the debt. Obviously, we're talking bonds, and they can't be paid down early, so we can just keep not for the debt service. And then also, so then basically if you sell the club now, if you have an idea what you might sell it for, the range.
We're not even going to spec.
All right. So let's say you sell it for $1 million, $2 million, and the debt service is $200,000. I know that's not accurate, but that's the remainder of that money then can be used for current expenses, current township expenses. So for the current budget year, and as we know, we've been talking all year about all the various expenses township have. Appeals, tax appeals are very significant this year. There's funding that's needed for employment benefits. That was what I think maybe back in 2009, 8 million behind that year. So there's a lot of significant benefits. I think what you're not telling people is that you really need a great deal of money right now to plug a hole in the township's current budget.
We have no, we're not even able to account for it right now, Ms. Baum, and there is no plans to balance this year's budget on the backs of selling the pool club as you're alluding. Absolutely incorrect. 100% incorrect.
All right.
That's what you just alluded to.
You can argue it, but what I'm saying is that the township, this is something that the township has to be considering, that there's, not only do you get out from not having the operating costs on the shoulders of the township and the public, but that money is money that can be used right now for the current budget, and it's needed. It's needed.
We can't. We're not going to be able to sell. There's no way we can sell it in time for the current budget. So
it's impossible.
And we were, yeah. We have the 1 point. I mean, yeah, we're hope. Clearly we hope that it covers the debt service.
So the answer is no.
We don't know that. It's going to have a restrictive restriction on it.
So you can argue about that. I see it as.
It's not much of an argument. I wish that were the answer, but it's not.
Right. That's just the point that I thought.
Well, we can't have half
Well,
this
another
continue.
point. Then let me continue then. I'll argue that. Mr. Nelson, you mentioned that, and we just said that some of the money that would come in would be used to pay for debt service. And there's a lot of talk tonight about the 2% cap. One of the things that falls outside of the 2% cap is debt service.
As I said, right?
So the money that you would really be using for debt service would just be used for other expenses, and taxes would still be increased to pay the debt service above the 2% cap. Isn't that correct?
Theoretically, but
Theoretically.
that's not the intent.
I'm sure if that were done, there'd be another room full of people here with a whole bunch of other issues that are being raised. I mean, that's obviously not what would be done. The whole intent is
If debt service falls outside of the 2% cap, then any money that comes in, you're going to be using toward other expenses, and that debt service is going to fall outside of the cap, your taxes are going to go up anyway.
The 2% cap, we don't look for everything we can throw outside the cap to raise taxes. We try to keep taxes low, whether it's inside the cap or outside the cap. The reason it's an outside the cap issue is because we don't have control over that, per se. We have control over new debt. We don't have control over the old debt that might be going up each year. So they keep it out of the cap for that reason. The committee still does not want to increase taxes just because it's not capped. So just make that understanding that it's not, oh, well, it's outside the cap and we can increase it as much as we want. Taxpayers still have to pay the taxes if you increase it outside the cap.
And that's when we get to the issue of how much more money you would have to, capital you would have to do on the place that would raise taxes even though it's outside of the cap.
Just to once again be clear, we are not looking to balance the budget while selling the swim club. I will say that once again. What we cannot afford is to take any further loss and put it into our budget from an operating perspective. That cannot be afforded. So that will be on the same page with. But there's no spirit or intent to sell the club and balance our books. It wouldn't work that way. It's not possible and it won't work that way. But what we can't do is incur continual operating debt that there's no more surplus that now will be incurred as part of the 2% cap. That is not an option for us. So. But we're going to have to, if you have one more.
I do have
we
just another quick question.
We can catch you afterwards.
Let me continue.
I'm going to give you one more minute.
I'm here. Yes, one more minute. I had a couple questions about the two bond ordinances from the last meeting. A couple questions that really I didn't feel I didn't get answers to then. Those two ordinances, I mentioned the section 20 costs, I felt that they were double normal. They were around 20% of the bond, of the principal amount, which is about double, 20% being double what they normally are from the bonds that I've looked at. And you mentioned, Mr. Kiseni, that engineering costs are included in that. Well, has the definition of section 20 costs changed over the last few years? Okay, if the definition hasn't changed, then why are these section 20 costs 20% versus previously other bonds 10%? Why the?
Well, no, it's every project stands on its own, depending on the type of project it is. We can issue a bond ordinance, which we have, which is 100% section 20 costs, because the only thing we're doing with that bond ordinance is engineering. We have done that last year. We issued a bond ordinance.
Are we doing that with these?
I'm answering your question.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. And when we did that last year, we had one for 100% just dedicated to design and bidding out the project. Sometimes we issue bond ordinance for equipment, which has like 5% section 20 plus just for reissuance costs and for advertising. So every one of them stand on its own. The last two, one was for Shadow Lake dredging and one is for the repairs to some of the properties that had hurricane. There's so many disasters this year, last year. The hurricane damage. So those, we can anticipate as much as we'd like as section 20 costs, just in case there's more, but the reality is those are more, they're probably 20% is accurate where it's engineering, and actually for Shadow Lake, it might be a little less, more than that, because there are fees that we have to, reports that we have to apply for at the DEP and permitting and, testing the soil and all sorts of things. So those section 20 plus are going to be higher than 20, they could be higher than 20%. So like I said, every project stands on its own.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. We're going to move on for other people. You can, Mr. Sante, be happy to.
All right.
Happy to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, the Andrew Homack, 210 Borden Road, Middletown. First, I just want to say thank you to the committee for something I think they did, but you may not be aware of, is that I got the feeling when we left the meeting at the beginning of the month, or last meeting a couple weeks ago, that the property was going to be sold to the highest price bidder. And it seems now that you've at least agreed to do a deed restriction. That's a big step, and I do appreciate that. Because that would go a long way in helping the township. My little story on my own, we know the swim club, we have an Olympian, won a bronze medal, started our swim club. I'm looking now, hopefully my daughter's going to pick up from the Red Bank Y. She's tail off, hoping to make the national team this year. So there's a lot of good stories. But I understand, we really have to look at finances. One of the things I'm looking at here is, first, the deed restriction. Can we not make that a swim and recreation deed restriction? Would that narrow it and reduce the value of the club that much more?
Very. I think we really have to try to strike a tricky balance between,
yes.
I can tell you one thing that's crystal clear from the conversations that we've had with a number of folks, is that one of the big issues is that it really needs to be a year-round facility, regardless of what it is, to generate the revenue to cover the actual, capital and operating costs of it. That's the first point. There's only certain things, there are limitations, also legally, what we can do through a deed restriction, and we try to, through our ordinances that I mentioned as well, on top of the deed restriction, try to provide some limitations as to, like, somebody couldn't put a horse track in there, for example, or something like that. But it is, the more you restrict it, the more limited pool of potential bidders you're going to restrict it to, and that's, you know, a difficult balancing act.
Well, we do have somebody who is looking at it as a swim facility.
A number of the people, yeah,
around.
a lot of, I'd say most of the people that are interested are people that are interested in purchase. Most of them were people that operate facilities that are either, you know, that have, that swimming is, you know, swimming facilities.
A swim deed restriction would not reduce income that much.
It puts us in a position where if those facilities kind of figure out, well, it's swim, well, then maybe they drive down their price to potentially say, well, we're not competing against anybody else but swim. So it's a delicate balance.
Because I looked at the assessment, I mean, the land was worth 1.9 million on our tax books. The improvements are worth a little over $1 million. You know, we know that they're being assessed, they're going to come down a little bit because of the economy. You know, so I would like to encourage you to really restrict it to a swim, since we do have some people looking there. That'll create a balance between what the Save Our Swim Club Committee wants, what the residents want, and really, it might be a really good balance, especially since we have some people.
I think the
looking at
swim would probably, I mean, again, it's tough because I hear what you're saying, but you know, from legal advice and from just practicality, I think it would, if we get too deed restrictive, it's going to certainly then meet a portion where we're maybe not going to meet what we need to be. We're going to have to reject bids. So, but if it's going to be a year-round facility, obviously I think a swim facility is something that can be a year-round facility where, you know, would be a great benefit. And look, hopefully that's what it comes out, where it comes out to be. But it's tough for us to foreshadow that, you know, I mean, there are certain procedures that we can't.
Another part of that question is, can that deed restriction be put in now and not at the sale?
Well, we would have to, there would have to be, I mean, it doesn't make it, I mean, it's in the, it would be, the auction would be subject to it. So whoever records the new deed, it would have to be in that deed. I mean, we can put it in now, but it doesn't, you have to put it in the new deed again anyway, it's just, it doesn't.
It would be an
Yeah, you gotta do it, you have to record the new deed to the, you know, it doesn't really, it doesn't make a difference to do it now or then. I mean, we could do that technically, I have to think about it, but yeah, we could do that, but with whatever restrictions, but I mean, we're just gonna have to do it again anyway when we sell it to restrict it anyhow. So
Actually,
but we also want to make.
I wouldn't do it now because.
Well, we actually,
if no one bids, then we restrict it our own.
you know what, we actually, now thinking about it, we probably couldn't because I'm not sure whether, it would depend on the bonds because the property is currently financed. The financing of the property, we'd have to go back and look at the bonds to see if, because honestly, we probably couldn't do it because that wasn't a subject of the condition of the bonding when we financed it in 1997. If those notes are, if I don't know which, you know, if all the 97 series are paid off or not, I don't know if some of it, if it's all just subsequent capital, but that could be an issue with the financing.
Another area of question is looking a little bit more at the numbers. I was guilty when I left the meeting. I sent out a memo to all the people I went to see, hey, who would be interested in putting up some bond money to take operation of the club and be the one person who would let me property stay in the Township Committee's ownership with a, what was it called, the reversal clause? Reverter clause. You know, and I didn't get the kind of response I wanted. I did get some good response. But if we were to come up with money, I was looking for $1 million. But if we were to come up with about $400,000, which is the operating cost, not including the bond payment.
Is that our right? What was the operating cost? 491 included the bond payment?
That's based on, again, you're basing on last year's numbers of.
Right, and just to that, Thompson School, who usually has their school 8th grade graduation picnic there, they just signed a contract with the land. So there's $4,000.
There's a lot of
there's a lot of that
going on. So already, you know.
So I know the revenue is going to be going down this year.
I mean, 10
except
people I saw yesterday.
Enormous market. But if we came up with a number of like the $400,000 on a bond, is that something feasible?
It would have to be more than that to cover the operation than 400,000. That's the problem.
That's not getting two different numbers.
It would have to cover, it would have to.
The numbers
the
that
number,
cover the numbers he's gonna
the
add.
number would have to cover the township's entire liability to run it for this year. So we would have to be able, he would have to, by March 9th, be able to put a line item in the budget saying, this account number has X dollars in it for the operation of the swim club utility for 2012 calendar year. Okay? He would,
Operational with or without?
that would be, plus everything.
Okay,
Everything.
so that's what I'm saying. I'm saying if it was 400,000,
Probably gonna be light.
that would be light.
And based on the last few years.
I'm talking total operating.
It was over, I mean, it was over, I mean, it was over 500,000. You know, that's the numbers.
Well, the 2011 cost operate was just south of 511,000.
And that includes bond?
Includes debt service.
That includes debt.
And that's based on last year's revenue that we know is gonna be less this year, so
But operating
we need to make sure that.
by
No, the operating cost will be the same.
No, operating cost is operating.
yeah.
We cut seven, and that was based on, we cut 70,000 out of the operating.
That's why when somebody asked that before, we said that's 600,000.
Yeah, I mean, 600 being the safe number to know that we have everything covered.
Okay. So if we got a nonprofit group together, had a $600,000 bond, took over operation of the club, that is something that you would look at
It
as
has to be money we can put, it has to be cash.
Yeah, it can't be a bond, it'd have to be cash and
No,
not,
it would be cash by
Right,
bond.
yeah, we could run off of that for any shortfalls, yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that can make comment?
I had no idea when I came here tonight that I was going to get up here. I would have put some makeup on. But I know nothing about the numbers, and I totally understand your dilemma in feeling like the best answer for the township is to auction off this piece of property. But I want to just tell you a little story. My husband and I moved here from Brooklyn, New York 14 years ago. Prior to that, I spent my entire summer, every summer of my life at Connors Beach Club in Highlands, which is now the ferry terminal and a parking lot. And I remember the day that that place closed, and we cried our eyes out, because that's where we grew up. That's where we met people. That's where we had, to this day, lifelong friends. I learned how to swim there. My mother learned how to swim there. We have friends that came from all walks of life that we still today are friends with. When we moved to Middletown and we knew that we could come to a pool club to raise our children, it was one of the key reasons why we signed on the dotted line. My daughter was 4 months old when we moved here. She's going to be 15 in a couple of weeks. My husband and I decided 8 years ago that we wanted to become foster parents in the state of New Jersey to help some other children that didn't have what we had. The day that my boy arrived in my house, August 19th, 2004, was a Thursday evening. The next day, he was at the Middletown Pool Club. He's now 8. He's my adopted boy. 6 months after he arrived, our little girl arrived. When the pool club opened 4 months later, she was there. She's now 7. Where are we going to bring our kids now? What are we going to do with them? Sure, I can drive to Seabright and sit in traffic for 45 minutes. Where are we going to bring these kids? These kids that are now meeting other kids that they wouldn't normally meet, that are friends. Not only are the parents friends, but the kids are friends. Where are we going to bring these kids now? We go to the library, ma'am, with all due respect. My children go often, but it's not where they learned how to swim. And it's not where they learned how to read, because my children learned how to read at Bayview School with Mrs. Smith. My kids want to play. They go to the pool club at 10 o'clock in the morning and we stay there until it closes at 8. That's what we want. We're begging you to please do everything that you can to keep this a pool club. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Clifford Heller. I'm on 279 Linda Street. This is the first meeting I've attended. I'm very sorry I didn't make the last one so that I'd have more information. But I heard something here tonight that I really want to beg you to consider. I've listened to the SOS committee and their ideas. And I like the idea. I believe that our pool club and the property is definitely underutilized. If we could get just a little bit of time, get some fresh people who haven't been involved in the process, get some fresh ideas and perhaps some thinking outside the box, I truly believe this property could not only pay for itself, but could probably turn a profit and be beneficial to the township as a whole. We just need new, fresh blood on the project. You said the same people were working on it for 3 years, and it failed. New people, new insight, and just a little bit of time. This pool club could turn a profit, and it could be a great asset to the town and can continue to fulfill everything we need. So please consider just a little bit more time and some fresh ideas. Thank you very much.
Jump in 944 Lane. I guess I have a question just to ask, and we have neighboring towns such as Homedale and Hazlet that run pretty much similar pool clubs, less of the pool club as far as cabanas is concerned. And you have the asset of the cabanas at the pool club. I just don't understand how Middletown, this is kind of a failure as far as I'm concerned, because I basically have, I'm sure most of you have gotten the flyer from Hazlet and how they're going to give us the residential rate. Come to their pool club for $578 for a family. Tell me how that town is able to have a pool club and operate with, I'm not going to say better facilities, be able to use the capitalize on their investments there. And we have more assets as far as cabanas and revenue coming in from the cabanas. And we are not able to turn that around. We looked at how those pool clubs have run when we were not able to get revenue from this facility. We were able to even look at that and say, how are they doing? Have we spoken to those people in those towns? And it's really sad to say that I chose Middletown and the towns to live in New Jersey. And I'm really sad to say that I'm really upset with everything right now. I don't know what we have to offer as far as my children, what they're going to do this summer. Yes, I could go to Hazlet and I could go to Homedale. But you know what? That's not my town. That's not my community. My community is Middletown. These are the people that live here I want my children to associate with. I want to be able to walk around the pool club and know that my friend knows where my children are, if they're here, if they look like they're in trouble. Not somebody in Hazlet or somebody in Homedale. That's not our community. This is our community. And as far as people saying, well, we don't use the pool club, well, we don't use this, we are a community. A community. I don't use the art center. I don't use the senior center. But you know, we're a community. And the community.
But you can use it.
No, I cannot use the senior center.
You can use the senior center.
Okay. But the point of the matter is that not everybody uses every single thing in this community, and they say, well, well, that's fine, but we're here as a community to support each other. And there's many people have gotten up here and shown so much love and desire to have this place run. And I understand that it is the whole economic, but I really do believe that we have done nothing as a town. Let me just finish and then I will be quiet. Is basically
we haven't tried to improve it. And like Amanda spoke before me and said, we need new blood coming in. And I've been at clubs where management is like strict as anything about what goes on. And I can't really say that here. And I love everybody here in Middletown. I mean, people that work there and everything, but we need to be really strict about what goes on and how money comes in and who's getting in for free, who's going to sit. And I'm not here to knock the facility, but in order to be profitable, you need to manage properly. And nobody's ever really looked at that. Years go on and we think we're going to go by another year. And in order to have a business, you should be able to. You have to have proper management in place, because every business is going to fail if you don't have proper management in place. And I feel like we failed here. We failed as the town. We failed here. And I know you're here from
You're 1,000% right.
And that's what's very upsetting to me, is that, you know, my children, many children, I've been here 18 years in Middletown, and they're, what are we going to do this summer? What are we going to do this summer? I know there are worse people off, and they've lost their jobs, but to our children, this is what they did in the summer, and now they're saying, what are we going to do? And just one other question, I guess, about the auction process. And I'm not that familiar with how it works, but when you put something to auction, do you take the highest bid, or if you're not happy with the bid, then it just stops, or how does that work? In other words, can somebody just buy this for nothing? I mean,
no, we can reject bids.
Okay.
We were always, by law, unless there's clearly a problem with somebody's ability to finance or something, but they would have to leave a significant deposit that day to even participate in the bidding. They have to put some cash on the table. But we always reserve the right to reject all bids, and that's the way we would structure the auction, so that ultimately the Township Committee would have to accept or reject whatever bids come in that are, appear to have the financial wherewithal and the ability to close within the times that we define under whatever the terms of the auction are that would be defined in the ordinance. So that. I think that answers your question.
Okay, now what would happen in that case now? Just say that scenario happened, what would you do then? If there's nobody who's going to auction, nobody's going to make a bid that's going to be sufficient for what you want, or it's just not, what's going to happen to the property?
If all the bids were rejected, then it would not, obviously would not operate, but the township would have to pay the debt service for 2012.
Figure out what land bid.
But we're fairly confident, based on the interest that has come in the past 2 weeks since the last meeting, that we're not going to be in that situation.
Okay.
So let me just address a few questions for you before you sit. All of the questions that you raised about the running, the management, have all been asked. At least I've been on this Township Committee since January 2009. It's my first month after being elected. All of those questions were asked by me, former committee members, to the director of the pool club at the time. All the questions about changing the business model, about Hazlitt. We spoke to people in Hazlitt. At that time, Hazlitt was about to go under too. Now, maybe Hazlitt in that time before the cap, and I'm only hypothesizing, I don't know this for a fact, I know the Y came in, the Y came out. Maybe it's a different type of facility in Hazlitt. It's not a Cabana Beach, Cabana type club. It's more of a pool. There's K pool differences. There's a lot of differences between the clubs, but maybe they used taxpayer money at the time to offset. Maybe they did. I don't know if that was their spirit, their intent. I can say the average tax bill in Hazlitt is higher than the average tax bill in Middletown. So it can be an apples to oranges, discussion. But all of the questions you mentioned, you're 100% right. We've asked those to those who are running the swim club as utility members. At least I have, and Dr. Scharfenberger has been here longer than I have as. And all these members, and quite honestly, it has been a failed business proposition for the township to run the facility based on the spirit and intent of the ordinance of having it run self-sufficiently. And I can't tell you what other towns have done, whether they've used taxpayer funds, what they've done, what they haven't done. Now you can't. If they tried to do it now, they'd never be able to do it with the 2% cap. So I don't know if that came, I don't know what happened to Strathmore pools out in Aberdeen, versus, I don't know what happened to them versus what happened in Hazlitt. But all I can tell you is that we've asked those questions, and anyone that's ever come to us, the number of I mean, if you've been in the pool, you've been at the pool club for a number of years, you have to have noticed, despite the fact that we had, promotions to get people in there, or we changed, the fee structure, all we've seen is a continual declining of membership. Continual. It's a trend. It was in 08, trended down in 09, trended down in 10, trended even further in 11. There's nothing that would suggest to me in 2012 that trend would change because of the facility, because of the capital, because people tell me the bathrooms are junk, or this is junk, or that is junk. I don't know what the reasons are that people don't want to go, but they stopped. And that's the hard number and why we're here.
I think last year the problem was that I went on the website again today and saw that when it was actually advertised, it was March 25th or the end of March. Now at that point, when you guys decided to open last year, it was very late again and people had made their plans. So now you're
We were
not
about to make this decision last year. We were
right,
about
that's
to
why
make this decision. We were very close.
Here because it was put out very late, and this is the same. What we're having here is if we would have advertised earlier here.
But the biggest drop in the numbers was not from the year before to last year. It was, I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it was from 09 to 10, or it was 09 to 10. I don't have it in front of me, but it might have been 10 to 11, maybe, right? But it's when we saw the greatest decrease. But again, you're 100% right. I can't argue with you. I mean, those questions were asked. I'll get you the minutes. I'll show you my comments. I was in the paper last year saying we're all in and we're all out because we weren't going to open last year, but
isn't it the town held accountable to make sure that if they're, I mean, you say you're not in the business, you want to add the business, but if you're in the business to run a place that should be run where people want to be there, by trying to promote members to come into there, or like Tracy has said, try to have a parent committee come in there years ago. I mean, that would have helped you out a lot. What's
done is what's done. I mean, I hear you, but we're gonna have to wrap up. But what's done has been done. I mean, I can't. I wish I could go back in the past myself. We just understand.
Jim Gunifedge, Red Coach Lane. This is the first meeting that I've been to this year, so I want to take the opportunity to acknowledge your win and your win as well.
Thank you.
Broadly speaking, some of what I'm hearing in the foreground and the background of this conversation is to do with planning and looking at finances and those kinds of things. So, although I still support a finance committee, that's not where I'm going right now. What I would like to see, and I'd like all of you to consider going forward, quarterly, for lack of a better terminology at this point, but quarterly financial reports that look forward, look back, but look forward, because you've been talking about trends here. And I know that from attending these meetings in the past that this has come up before, but it's very often we don't see the attendance that we're seeing tonight because there's a particular issue. So it might be helpful from an informative perspective where the Chief Financial Officer, in particular, I'd be focusing there because we'd be looking at his expertise, but all of you at the same time, where you might, arbitrary numbers here, carve out 2 hours, PowerPoint presentation, where we are, where we might see ourselves going 3-4 years down the road. So people wouldn't, I'm not saying this happened, but people wouldn't get the sense that they were caught short in terms of hearing about this, all of a sudden making plans. So that's a thought that the administrative people might want to kick around, you might want to kick around as well. I would like to see it personally. I've been thinking about it for a while. As I'm hearing about the deed restriction, switching topics here a little bit, hearing about the deed restriction, and you're looking at it for recreational purposes, and I'm hearing some people would like to make it very thin from the perspective of, swim only or very specific along those lines. I'm going to I don't think you're going to go that way, but I would discourage that because I think it's going to limit opportunity. Now, when I hear the word recreation, I start to think very broadly, and I'm just going to throw some examples out. Bowling is a recreational activity. So conceivably, that could not happen. if somebody wanted to go to the expense of putting up an indoor golf facility, I could see that happening. So I'm assuming that those kinds of restrictions, I mean, because I'm hoping you're going to leverage as much as you can that piece of property. I'm really hoping you're going to do
It'll be
that.
subject to planning board approval if they tried to do that type of.
And then probably conversations around that, so on and so forth. But my request is that when you're going forward, just keep it as wide open as you possibly can. Now, I could also see where something like the Atlantic Club, for those of you that are familiar with in Red Bank, I can see a private organization like that going in there and putting the money into it where they could put an indoor pool, they could put an outdoor pool, they could maybe have tiered memberships, just like you do at football games, you know, the box seats and the bleachers, so it could appeal to the entire community and they could all have access to it. Personally, I hope that given that the money that was spent in the past, $400,000, I believe, on a recreational plan, that becomes a driver in your decision-making process here, that it fits into that. I know there was conversation, because I attended those, and I do recall somebody saying that if you're going to put an ice hockey rink in, not saying you're going there, but if somebody would put an ice hockey rink in, we're looking at ice hockey, figure skating, pool, water, whatever it is for the kids, or, yeah, those kinds of things. And the problem, I think, at that point in time is finding the right piece of property where all that would work. And I think we're looking at 15 acres here? 10. 10? Okay. So I haven't looked at that master plan in quite a while, actually. So, but I thought that seeing how we've invested in it, and this is a suggestion, that as you go forward, that you look at that very carefully as you go into this auction process, and try to incorporate as much of that as you possibly can in it. Now, the other extreme is I'd like to see no deed restrictions so the community can get, well, I mean, that's just personal. You know, get the most that you can of that piece of property. I understand the quality of life issues that you're going for there, so that's my thinking and thoughts on that. Couple of, how am I on time here? Got a minute?
Yeah, you got a minute.
Got a minute?
You got 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. What is, can you have any, seeing how we just went through an assessment or reevaluation, or what is the assessment on that pool club property? Do you have those numbers, or can it be easily gotten?
It's right on our website.
You can look it up on the county website.
Is it? $3 million.
Yeah, I'm looking for, I mean, because I don't have the audit numbers or any of that kind of stuff to go.
That's on presumption, it's zone commercial with no deed restriction or anything like that.
All right, so that's a ballpark number. The way it is,
The way it currently is.
currently is assessed, that could switch with the deed restriction.
Well, part of the assessment, part of the process of the assessment is not only what, condition of the land and the buildings, but what is actually would be allowed to be there. So since it's commercially zoned, its assessment is higher because you can have all
The highest, the best use is far more than what may be currently there. Clearly, more than what's there.
So that's ballpark. That can.
Yeah, I mean assessment.
That's enough.
That's without a deed restriction.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Two things. First, the school, the Board of Ed elections in November. I just want to clarify something I had heard. If the budget is under the 2% cap, it will no longer go to vote because it's in November.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that
That
I
is
understand
correct.
correctly.
That's part of the agreement.
Right, it's something that the governor had done.
It's part of the law.
Right, well, yeah, it's not you, it's not Middle County.
So long as it's under 2%.
That's how they structured the law to encourage the school districts to do it, I think.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was understanding that.
100% right.
And second, again, well, I have two kids, 15 and 8. My son started his swimming career at the pool club. If it wasn't for the pool club, he would not be a competitive swimmer this year. He just went to a short conference as a freshman, which in my opinion was pretty good. So he would not be where he is today if it wasn't for that pool club. That is not look like the material of having a pool club back. Mr. Holmack had said before, we appreciate the fact that you're doing the deed restriction, that it's going to be recreational. I could still potentially have some place to take my children to and do other activities. I would encourage having some sort of a pool, an indoor pool. You have 2 high schools with swim teams that travel to Perth Amboy for practice and for meets. That's going to cost a lot of money. We're worried that we're going to lose the swim team at the high school level because of budgets.
We've even talked to the Board of Ed about the problem.
You know, what are we going to do? That you're taking away a whole sport, and it's just, it's not fair to the children. And then the other thing, if it is zoned recreational, you can, there's the ice hockey rink, you too, it's the same thing with the ice hockey teams. I know they have to put a huge amount of money. That can be utilized by the high schools. You need to look at the high school sports and how you can utilize that along with the schools.
And I think whoever is going to bid on the property knows that. And if you looked at our, and to Mr. Grenfell's point before you, if you looked at our recreation master plan, 2 most wanted things were an indoor aquatic facility and a hockey rink. So it's exactly what the master plan needs.
We're anticipating that people, if we were to ultimately auction the property, would know exactly what you know and realize that there's potential market there and a need there.
I mean, and there's, you know, huge, soccer is huge in Middletown as well. I mean, you know, there's so much that can be done, and I just don't want, like the gentleman before, you know, it's like an indoor golfing range. You know, my husband might be happy, but I'm not going to be happy.
They seem to be shrinking rather than coming up.
Yeah, some of it too, you have to look at the realities of just of the economics of the market. For example, no one's going to buy 10 acres for a bowling alley. You know, so although yes, technically it'd be allowed, would somebody really do that and pay the full price? You know, not likely. Similarly with an indoor golf facility, it's probably not big enough for the type of facility that you need to have there to do that. So the size of the property, the location, and all that, some of that will naturally limit the various uses to the type of things we're all talking about here.
Just keep in mind everything that, you know,
I hope for a bigger and better facility, just like you did, you know, for...
You know, it scares me because, you know, my son has grown up here, like I said, he's 15, and it's the first summer that he might be on his own, like roaming around the neighborhood, and I'm not happy about that. I mean, we all know that there's issues in Middletown. You know, we read the police blotters, you know, we know that there's crime, we know that there's a drug problem. I don't need him going in that direction because he doesn't have something to keep him occupied.
Anyone else?
Point of order. I was the featured speaker tonight, and I might use 1 minute at a time.
There's still a few people whose hands I've seen, Leo.
I was being indulgent and allow me to speak another minute.
I think there were a few other people I think I saw. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to make public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jill Fergliano, 113 Preston Drive. I had a question for you. I'm hearing about one of the gentlemen asking how much it costs to get the swim club up and running this year, and was it $600,000?
That's a ballpark estimate. Ballpark estimate.
Ballpark, okay. My question is, Mr. Fiore, is that with capital improvement done to the building?
No.
Okay, so we're adding that, I'll figure on.
As is right now, as the pool club stands today,
Yes.
to operate with the debt service.
Yeah, that's.
We're not putting, this is not putting any additional capital money
No,
into
no,
it.
what I'm asking you is that, if you're looking at $600,000, is that with the upgrading maintenance that needs to be done to the existing building? No.
No.
So you're adding more money on to that, am I correct?
That number would increase if we
You
did.
have to add more if you're going to make another.
Right, so the bottom line is, if the individuals were looking to have the swim club up and running this year, $600,000 would not be an accurate figure.
Well, we're talking about possibilities here. I mean, the reality is if someone came along with $600,000, and said, can you open the pool club? We may say yes, but the issue would be, but tell us how you're going to deal with it next year. It's not just going to be $600,000 for this year.
I totally understand what you're saying. I get that. But what I'm trying to get at is, if there was somebody who wanted to support it and, donate the money to open up the club again, what is the bottom line? How much damage is done, how much from the hurricanes, or how much more improvement has to be done to the pools? The other question is this: what is the cost for the ADA upgrades so that you can be compliant? It's $6,000.
The $36,000 figure is those were estimates prepared by a consultant in 2007, 2008. That's not what the actual cost is. We have to pay prevailing wage on these projects. We've outbid out projects that were more than 5 times those estimates that are what I know what you're looking at. That's not an accurate estimate.
But it was a 2008 number.
It's a 2008 number, not 2008. Well, I'm telling you what the real number is. That's what we're telling you.
Where is it? There's a real number. I can make up a lot of numbers too.
You've had your turn, sir. She's up to the mic.
I'm not a member of the swim club. I respect every single one of these people as far as their lovely stories with raising their children and whatnot. I am a taxpayer here. I also was one of the 13 individuals that did lose their job close to a year ago. So for me, I want my friends to be able to utilize the swim club. I'm in support of trying to maintain the swim club, but not at the cost of additional taxpayers' dollars, with myself being one of them. And that's what my question was, as far as to try and help them. If you could open the swim club, what's the bottom line dollar is what I'm trying to get at. Because without affecting the taxpayers.
Well, I think what I said is to keep it open, we say it's about $600,000. But if someone were proposing to provide that, it would have to come along with a plan for the future. In other words, if someone had a viable plan for year 2 and 3 and 4, we may look at that. But right now, what we're saying is that it would take about $600,000 to open it up this year.
Okay, but that's without the ADA upgrade.
Correct.
That's without, is that payroll?
That's payroll, utilities, the debt service, the existing debt service, all that. That's what it would cost the township to open the doors, to get it ready every year. There was about $30,000 to $40,000 of staff time every year just to get the place open, to clean it up, get everything running, to do all the general maintenance, to make sure it's safe and usable. So that's the $600,000 figure would cover everything that Nick would need in the budget at the beginning of the year by March 9th. That he would need. I mean, we could always do an amended budget a little bit later, but he would need all that. He would need a line item in the budget to have that money in there in order to operate for this calendar year.
Okay, and then I think the other thing is that my understanding is that the civil law, as far as the ADA compliance for the upgrades, it would have to be completed by March 15th, if, as of right now, but not in this case, because it would be by the time the swim club opened.
We have our ADA. I don't have it in front of me, but we have a year to do. I mean, it's something that has to be done. The issue is we would have to bond. It's under our plan. That would have to be done by next year, but we would have to do the bonding this year for that capital for next year.
Right, but my understanding is from the federal government, it has to be done.
Oh, the pool access, that's pool access. You said the pool access has to be done by this year.
Correct. Before you open your doors.
Yes, that part would have to be
Where are
done.
we getting that money to do that? That's my
Well,
question. So that's what I'm trying to get at, the bottom line.
We'd actually have to go out and get estimates if it could be covered within the operating costs. That's one option.
Homedale just actually did that last year.
You'd have to finance it through capital again. So again, if you're adding to the debt service, you can be on the project already.
We're going to have to.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Anyone else from the public like to make public comment? Leo, I can't do it right now, my man. Seeing no other members looking to make public comment, and motion to close the public comment. Oh, one more. Did I miss somebody? I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't see you there. I saw Leo. I apologize.
listened to the entire meeting because I was bringing my daughter down to swim in Neptune. She learned to swim for moved here 11 years ago. She was so excited about it in Brooklyn. This was a benefit I never had as a kid. I was so pleased to give her something so healthy. I have to just touch on some things that were said briefly. Moving forward from here, the township finally recognizes what we the members have suspected for some time, that the club has not been run with financial responsibility. And now that this is a public discussion, why not give the residents, all the residents, the taxpayers, the members, all the taxpayers, the right to understand your side, the right to understand our side. Put it forward to a public vote before Middletown loses the land that we all know does benefit Middletown, Middletown present, and more importantly, Middletown future. And before you sell it to somebody and risk that entity going to foreclosure, I have to ask you, so I can go home and sleep tonight. I can try to help you all understand, because everyone here has so many more numbers and information. I hope you understand what you're putting at this. And I also want to ask, do you as the Township Committee have the ability to move this? You do have the ability to move it from a utility. You're choosing not to?
We have the ability to move it from a utility, we're choosing not to.
I'm asking you, I'm asking you, do you have the ability to move it from a utility?
You could, you still need the money.
Take it on as another recreation facility.
As Hazlet does, as Homedale does?
They don't have a utility, I don't think.
I'm asking you,
Yes.
does Middletown have the ability to run the swim club in the same way that Hazlet
By
has
ordinance, no.
managed to?
I don't know how they set it up. By ordinance, no, we'd have to dissolve the utility by ordinance to do that. Okay, so to answer your question where I think you're going, and maybe I'm wrong. So if we were to absorb this on the township books this year, okay, and take on the debt service and take on the negative liability to the revenue, versus the income, then we will have a public referendum in November, or whatever, in June or whatever it is. And that referendum will be because we're blowing past the 2% cap. And I will promise you that we will be shot down for exceeding that cap handily, as all the other towns basically were last year. So that's the issue with why we can't do that. So there would be a referendum to blow through the cap. And it did not work out well in 35 of 37 towns, I think, that tried it. And the 2 that did, it didn't work out very well in their next election.
No, putting it out there, what is at risk of Middletown losing and never getting back? You feel comfortable that you can see the future and predict it?
I feel comfortable that there is enough entities that would be willing to build a much better recreational facility than we currently have based on our capital needs over there that would be a benefit to the community. I do feel comfortable in that. I'm pretty confident based on
Have
this.
you made a great effort to sell, or is it even possible to sell a portion of that large property to at least control and sustain the pool club in some form? Is it possible to sell a piece of that property?
Well,
it's not.
Look, if you carved off an acre of the 10 acres and sold it, and that got you enough money to run the pool club, what do I do next year?
No.
And I don't have an acre to sell.
I'm asking you, I don't know the
Right,
answer.
no, that's why we have to decide on that.
One-time infusions of money.
I'm not
don't
asking
help
you
run the club.
to sell off a piece that will then
But
allow
other
us to
towns-
open for 1 more year or 2 more years. I'm asking you, if you've looked at the numbers, that would allow you to sell off how much of the land to put that money into the pool club and pay off the debt.
No,
Nothing is possible?
You
No
can't
piece
split
of
the
that
pool
land
in
is
half.
possible?
I mean, most of the land is developed. You need the parking lot, you need the pool areas.
So you've looked
You
at
need
that?
to,
it's more practical
You have to
versus.
have.
there's wetlands,
We have to understand the value of land and things like that, which we have a pretty good handle on that. And get enough for 1 or 2 acres of land. It probably wouldn't even help you
Not
for 1 year.
And I appreciate
But most of the 10 acres is already used. There's not excess land that's unused on the club site. You've got the woods back as well.
it's unused for most of the year. It is unused for most of the
Well, the whole club's unused most of the year.
Yeah, but most of it, some of it could be used throughout the year.
You're talking about, we talked about leasing part of the land in the winter? It's still not gonna cover, I mean, we're not gonna get nearly enough revenue per
So
lot.
you've looked at that?
We've looked at doing that. We actually looked at the temporary hockey rink.
We looked at,
Didn't work.
buying adjoining properties, we looked at, I mean,
We looked at the Aaron Park property, which had a piece of property, we looked at maybe bringing it.
Years ago, just so you
temporary
understand,
rink.
before the township bought the club, the owners of the club actually got approval to build a bubble over the tennis courts and close those tennis courts. They also, first of all, there was a lot of objection from the neighborhood that they didn't want that. But in the end, they didn't build it anyway because they just couldn't make a go of it. And that's why they decided to sell the property. So there have been ideas over the years to try to do things that would make it more of a year-round facility to generate revenue throughout the year. And you can do those things. There's a big upfront investment in order to do that. So you're just piling on to the debt that you already have. That's the problem.
Okay, before I give it, just have to restate what I first said. And acknowledging that it has been mishandled, to give it up now, when you know the problems that happen, fix the problems, give it a chance before you sell it. Thank you.
Good evening, and I'd just like to recap.
Just name and address, please.
So I'll begin with my name and address, Mary Jo Fabiana, 216 Geary Drive. I think that hopefully you recognize that Middletown Swim and Tennis Club is the heart and soul for many of us, and has been for decades. It's the heart and soul of our summer. I'd like to say that in being there for a long time, over a decade, I've seen a lot of literature. And you're correct, we can always look at everything, we could have done this, we should have done that. I read everything from when water aerobics is to the camp and how to cross the refrigerator. Possibly something that said, would you like to be on the swim club committee and help? I would have been part of that. But we're here now, and maybe you've seen that in a few short weeks, a lot of us have come together, and we have some really good ideas. I am a member of the SOS committee. I am a proud member of Middletown, of our library, which is important to us all year long, and our schools. I love living in Middletown. I love everything it has to offer. And I love our cultural center and all the communities that make up Middletown. And I really hope that you consider the help and asset that the members of the community are prepared to give to making this work, because our swim club does work for so many of us in Middletown, of all ages, and that's one of my first. And I thank you very much for your time.
Would the public like to make public comment or close? Seeing no other members of the public, I will close public portion comment and move.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Michelle?
Yes.
Committeewoman Murray? Committeeman Schaffenberger?
Yes.
Committeeman Fennebrand?
Yes.
Mayor Fiore?
Yes.
Motion carries to adjourn.